okay. Sorry about this, folks. We tried this all this afternoon and everything was working perfectly. We come back to do the real call, all of a sudden we have a problem of some sort. Don't know what it is, but anyway, I'm going to turn this off now so it's not echoing. All right, so I started by asking councillors if they had any pecuniary interest to declare, and the answer was no. Correct? All right. Could we then get a motion to approve the agenda as circulated, please? Councillor Gordon Matthews moves, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Thank you. Favor? It's carried. So the next couple of items that we have are delegations. We have three tonight. The first one is from James Cox, who is Chief Staff Officer for West Parry Sound Economic Development. And so James, I'd like to welcome you. And James is going to give us an interim report of his activities for the past while. So the floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and members of council and members of the public for allowing me the opportunity to address you tonight. So, as Mayor Conley mentioned, my name is James Cox. I'm the Regional Economic Development Officer for the West Parry Sound Economic Development Corporation, collaborative. We're currently working on the 3-year economic development strategy that started in December of 2020 and is running through until December of 2023. And so we are just past the half point of the current term and current strategy that we're implementing. And so this, I think, is an opportune time to come out to our member municipalities and provide them with an update on the projects that we've undertaken over the past 18 months and what we're planning on doing in the 18 months to come. So as I mentioned, the West Parry Sound Economic Development Collaborative consists of all 7 municipalities within the West Parry Sound District, and they work together with a mandate to drive collaborative economic development in our area by building on the area's current economic strengths and pursuing new opportunities for economic development. And what this really means is that it makes sense to think of West Parry Sound as an economic region when put together. A lot of the communities within our member municipalities are quite small, but when we're all taken together, we represent an area that has a permanent population of approximately 20,000 people, and of course a seasonal population that can be 3 to 4 times higher than that. So this is a significant economic area. And our area really functions together well as a region when you look at the business community and our workforce that we have in our area. We know from the data that we've gathered in our surveys and also the census data that 80% of the workforce that is employed within the some 600 to 700 businesses that we have within the West Parry Sound area is local to West Parry Sound. So that means that our businesses, no matter where they're located within our region, whether it be in the town of Parry Sound itself, or in Rosso, working at the Parry Sound Industrial Park in Curwen Township, all of these businesses have employees that live and work or that live in our other communities, that live in Whitestone, that live in McKellar, that live in Seguin. So this area is really interconnected when it comes to how the economy operates. As I mentioned, we have close to 700 businesses that are located within our area. So it really is a vibrant economic region. And what we do is we attempt to build on those strengths. We attempt to help our businesses stay and grow within West Parry Sound and also attract new businesses to our area. So as I mentioned, we are currently operating, the current term of our work is supported by a grant that we have received from the federal government through FedNor. And the current term of our program started in December of 2020 and runs through until December of 2023. So the way that we go about doing economic development in West Parry Sound is we focus on 4 of our priorities: business retention and expansion, development readiness, investment attraction, and regional engagement. I'm going to very quickly go through what each one of these means and some of the things that we've been doing to further each one of these goals. So our first priority, and probably the most significant one for the Economic Development Collaborative, is business retention and expansion. So it's very basic level. This means that we aim to work with the existing businesses that we have within West Parry Sound to help them stay and grow in West Parry Sound. And the way that we primarily do this is through our business retention and expansion survey and our in-person business visitation program. So we aim to go out and meet in person with our business community as much as possible, virtually where it's not possible, to discuss how to get a good understanding of what their business is, what it's going through, what its potential challenges that it may be facing, and identify if there are any red flag issues that need to be addressed immediately in order to ensure that the business can continue to stay and grow in West Parry Sound. And for the past year and a half, a lot of that has related to the ongoing recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, helping businesses access funding that is available for retaining staff, hiring staff, procuring personal protective equipment, and that sort of thing. So in our business visitation program over the past 18 months, we have had the opportunity to get out and do surveys with 141 businesses within our area, of which approximately 65 of those have required some sort of follow-up and ongoing engagement from our office. Our initial focus in this outreach has been on the business sectors that make up the majority of our economy in this area. So that's manufacturing, that's tourism, and that's the service sector, or the commercial sector. And we've been conducting this work over the past 18 months. We're aiming to complete our survey program by the end of this year with a target of doing 200 business visits. We'll be producing a summary report of our findings, both in terms of what it tells us about our area's economy, what actions we've taken, and what some of the future recommendations for helping to strengthen our business community are. Because if we have a business that's doing particularly well in our community, maybe they're looking at expanding, maybe they're looking at hiring new staff, we want to ensure that they're able to actually stay here and grow here, that they don't have to move outside of our area to find the space that they need or to find the workforce that they need. Our second priority is the question of development readiness. So essentially, this is working to ensure that our area is ready to welcome investment when it comes. We have 2 very successful business parks within West Parry Sound, the Industrial Park in Carling Township and the Business Park at the airport. And we also work with all of the other member municipalities that are within our region to help them communicate to the business community what the development process is going to look like if they are interested in locating in a particular region. And this is primarily about ensuring that there's clear and open communication between our business community and our municipal partners to ensure that if we are able to attract an investment to the area, that process goes as smoothly as possible when it begins. Our third priority is the question of investment attraction. So this is what a lot of people traditionally think of for economic development, basically attracting new business and new investment to our area. And the way that we go about doing this is we provide a single point of contact for new business inquiries that are interested in locating in West Parry Sound. We have a lot of visibility as an area for new business. We are fortunate that we are the southernmost region that is eligible for a lot of the funding programs that are applicable to Northern Ontario, and that really helps us attract new business. So when we have interest that comes in, and we have an inquiry that we've deemed to be viable and serious, what we'll do is we'll go about organizing a familiarization tour where we welcome the prospective business up to our area. We'll show them around. We will show them potential lands that would be suitable for their business. We'll introduce them to local municipal staff and local decision makers, and really do what we can to welcome them to the area, put our best foot forward, let them know that they have a willing partner in the West Parry Sound area, and welcome that investment here. So over the past 18 months, we've organized 11 of these in-person fan tours, and I'm happy to report that of those, we've had 6 that have either opened a business here or have purchased land in our area and are working through the process to open up and create jobs in our area. And finally, our final priority is regional engagement. So this is where we work to ensure that economic development activities in our area are coordinated and connected as much as possible. So when you consider all of our member municipalities and other economic development supportive organizations like our federal and provincial ministries, our Chamber of Commerce, our business associations, post-secondary partners like Canadore College, the Small Business Center. In total, there's about 45 different economic development supportive organizations that are operating within West Parry Sound, and they all have a slightly different focus. They're either dedicated to helping small business or helping manufacturing businesses or things like that. It can be very challenging for a business owner to navigate this ecosystem and determine who is best suited to help them. And so we serve as a guide to that. We help our business community connect with the agency or the group that can support them the best. And we also coordinate and regularly network with these other agencies to ensure that we are coordinating our efforts so that there's no duplication and that we're taking full advantage of the opportunities for partnership that exist. So that is, in a nutshell, what we do with the Economic Development Collaborative. Over the coming 18 months for the duration of our term, as I mentioned, we are intending on completing our business retention and expansion program. We're aiming to reach 200 businesses by the end of this year. We'll also be launching an online component, so those that are unable to meet with us in person or connect with us in person are able to access, to reach out to us online. And I would also note that when it comes to doing business retention and expansion work, referrals are extremely valuable to us. So I would very much encourage any members of council or any members of the public that are involved with or know of a business that would benefit from a connection to the Economic Development Collaborative to please reach out and make that connection, because we're here to help, and we cover a huge area, and we want to ensure that everyone that could benefit from this program has the opportunity to do so. We're also working at shifting some of our investment attraction efforts more online to be more proactive and to ensure that we have the ability to provide a similar welcoming experience to prospective businesses that aren't able to come to our area in person and offer that digitally through the creation of a digital fan tour and some sector-specific marketing that we're developing as well. We're also looking at hosting an economic development event in the area, likely in spring of 2023, that will be focusing on community improvement planning and specifically how municipalities can help, what actions we can take, what policies we can put into place to help alleviate some of the housing crisis that we currently have in the area. Throughout all of our business retention and expansion surveys, workforce and housing are the two largest issues that are affecting virtually every business in our area. And those are two fundamentally interconnected issues. Our businesses are finding it hard to recruit people. And when they do recruit people, or if they're trying to bring people in from out of the area, it's very difficult for them to find housing in the area. This, I'm sure, comes as no surprise to anyone here, but it's a complex issue, but I think there are some concrete actions that we can take to help address this challenge in the long term. So that concludes the very quick overview of our activities, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James, for your presentation. Questions from councillors? Did you have a question, Councillor? Oh, okay.
Am I on?
You're on.
I'm on, I can hear you. Thanks very much, James, for coming up. Good presentation. Of the 134 visitations, I think there are 141 now. Did you say, if I caught that right? So I keep visiting. Can you tell us how many of those business visits would be within Whitestone?
So in terms of the exact number of business visits, I believe it has been approximately 20 of those visits. Most of the industry within our area is located either in the town of Parry Sound itself or in Seguin Township, where we've got our industrial parks, or that tends to be where most of the businesses are located. Although again, I would note that from our surveys that we've done, we know that the majority of the people that are employed in these businesses, no matter where they are in the West Parry Sound area, they live all over our area. And the majority, we know from the surveys that we've done, that the majority of Whitestone residents the majority of Whitestone residents, also permanent residents, work within the West Parry Sound area as well.
Yeah, duly noted. That surprises me. Good for you. That 20 of your visits have been to Whitestone businesses. Is that I heard you right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, good for you. My second and last question is: we're obviously going through a debate here, a public debate in terms of a manufacturing facility within Whitestone, out on 124, by a company called West Tech.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Please stop me if it's completely confidential, but have you had contact with them in terms of either, funding at other levels or discussions in terms of economic development? And if so, what can you tell us about that? And again, don't divulge, I'm sure you don't divulge any secrets, but I'd just be interested in whether they were in touch with you or you were in touch with them.
Through your worship. So this has been a process that's been going on for some time now. Our office did have contact with the company when they originally indicated interest in moving to the West Parry Sound area. That was a referral that came to us through the provincial economic development ministry. We provided them with general information about West Parry Sound, and my understanding is that they've been working through that process internal to their organizations. We haven't had much contact with them other than that initial contact that was made back in very early 2021.
Thank you.
Councillor McKeown.
Yeah, am I on?
You have to turn your mic on, I think. It's probably. It may even be off at the battery at the bottom. Yeah, right at the very bottom is a button.
Okay. Test.
Go ahead.
James, when a company is inquiring, say, through West Parry Sound generally, and before they spread out and find their way, like, would you be in contact with the municipality who was potentially the place they were leading to? It just seems like sometimes it bypasses maybe the local municipalities. Do you have a comment on that?
Through your worship, we absolutely, when we have an inquiry that comes in that is seriously considering investing in the area. Oftentimes they will have sites in mind already. And if that is the case, we will connect them to municipal staff and allow that process to take its course. We mainly view our role as welcoming the investment to the region and providing companies with the information they need to make an informed decision about where best to locate. Generally, this involves working with our partners at the industrial park, which is located in Carling Township and jointly operated by the municipalities of McDougall, Carling, and the town of Parry Sound, or at the Parry Sound area Airport Business Park, which again is jointly operated by the township of Sebring and the town of Parry Sound. That is generally where we try to steer out that investment when it comes through. But again, oftentimes, depending on the nature of the business, they may be looking at lands outside the area. We maintain a database of available lands that are suitable for development, which we steer any of our prospective inquiries towards. But again, that doesn't preclude them finding something else through their own contacts within the area.
Okay, thank you. And just one other question. When these companies are seeking federal or provincial assistance, do you only steer them toward those folks? Or is there some interconnecting, assisting role that you play?
Through you, Your Worship. So the main source of funding for new business development in the West Parry Sound area is through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund, which is administered by the province. And we have one of my predecessors in this role is our local advisor for that fund, and he works directly with the business community to help them complete their applications, ensure that they're having the most competitive opportunity that they can have to access that funding. So generally, from our point of view, we will make that connection, and then the funders will have advisors that will help them through that process. But we certainly are available to assist if that's requested of us.
Any questions? Well, maybe just one final one then for me. James, would you have any advice for Whitestone based on what you know of this community? Any advice in terms of what we should focus on in terms of attracting new business to Whitestone?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would say that Whitestone is a great example of a community that has a small but successful existing business community. And I think that economic development for Whitestone, probably the most successful that the community is going to be is really working with the existing business community, getting to know what their needs are, listening to what challenges that they're facing, and ensuring that, again, there are no red flag issues for any of the existing businesses that could impact their operations. A lot of attention gets placed into investment attraction, and that is absolutely, it's wonderful when we are able to do that. But the fact of the matter is it's a lot easier for us from the point of view of the municipality to work with one of our existing businesses to help them expand and maybe add 5 new employees than it is to attract a new business to the area that's going to hire five existing employees for a business that doesn't exist anymore. So I would say keeping the lines of communication open between the business community and the municipality is probably my top recommendation.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your report and for taking questions, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. All right. Our next delegation is from Whitestone's Environmental Stewardship Committee, and this evening we have Dennis Morrison, who has been chosen by the committee to present is it a mid-year report, a year one report?
How's that? Just getting the equipment going.
Yeah, we're still getting used to.
And so,
You can tell.
yeah, esteemed members of council, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to represent our Whitestone Environmental Stewardship Committee tonight. Provide you a little bit of a snapshot, year one report, give you some ideas. I know you get our minutes, but we thought we'd like to plug our committee a little bit more. So it was a 13-member committee, a standing committee, formed about a little more than a year ago, May of 21. And it's a very enthusiastic group. We have covered a lot of turf in a short period of time. Some of the highlights here that I'd like to bring up, and by the way, I want to recognize leadership of Councillor Beth Corman-Matthews and guidance of Joe McCune in assisting this very enthusiastic group to hit the road running. So we got together to look at. We formed a number of meetings, mostly virtual, with experts in the area to try to give us some information. They're on the first page there. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but some of the things that happened out of those meetings is what's key. The environmental TED Talk was something we got going. We did a BioBlitz on Nesbitt Trail a couple of times this year. I believe that we may have been influential in getting the municipality of Whitestone to join the IceCap group after some suggestions we made there. And we were very close touch with Georgian Bay Biosphere because they have biologists and a lot of resources, and we certainly tapped into that. One of the interesting initiatives that we were looking at was inventorying of lakes and trying to come up with an idea of maybe developing some lake management plans. It's a daunting task. We did meet a very interesting gentleman from, well, he's a retired, world-recognized expert in lake planning. His name is Bev Clark. You may have heard of him because he's done some work over in McKellar at Manitowoc. So on the third page there, my presentation is just kind of a highlight of what's called a lake inventory model. And if you turn to the next page, the highlight of all this, we started out with the initial problem of there's some 38 lakes in this municipality that are greater than 25 hectares. How in the heck are you going to try to get lake management plans for all those lakes? It's a very daunting task. But using this tool, we were able to move that down to recognizing what we thought were high priority lakes, and now we're down to 16 lakes. Again, a fairly daunting task, but certainly not as daunting as 38. And how did we get to that point? Well, first of all, its criteria is greater than 25 hectares. Next criteria is there anybody living there? Because if there's no residents, really, at this point in time, you don't need to have a lake plan. Similarly, is there any public access to those lakes? So by eliminating some of them, we got down to the high priority lakes. And that really starts to show us what direction, where we need to start collecting data, what lakes don't have any data, and maybe trying to develop some priorities going forward on how to tackle that. Another expert, I just want to, early findings, people often ask me, because I get involved with a lot of lake testing, well, what's the quality of the lakes? What are they like? But doing a few chemical tests and physical tests doesn't always give you the big picture of the quality of the lakes. It's many other things. And an initiative that we took was benthic monitoring, invertebrate, macroinvertebrate benthic monitoring, and it's an indication of basically the bugs and critters at the bottom of the lake bed. That combined with some of the other parameters will give us a lot clearer picture. And total phosphorus is one of them. Well, total phosphorus used to be collected on this lake, for example, up until 1997. And after that, we discontinued that program. And now through Lake Partners, we're starting to collect that data again.
So some of those key things will really start to give us the big picture, which I believe a lot of people want those answers. I will tell you one sort of preliminary idea that I have seen a lot, and that is shoreline vegetation. That's along the waterfronts. That loss is likely the major contributor to total phosphorus concentrations going up in lakes. We have to protect the shorelines. After that, I'll entertain any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Questions for Dennis? Well, I got a quick question while you're thinking about. I'm noticing in this chart, there's one acronym, but at least that I don't recognize, which is MVWHDO. What's that?
Well, I don't profess to know every acronym on this page, but it does involve with dissolved oxygen content, and it's
Oh, okay, dissolved oxygen.
yeah, it's an acronym for that. In particular, it's mean volume weighted dissolved oxygen. I don't know what the H stands for, but that's pretty close, I guess, for now. We don't have a lot of data in that area, but that stuff is done through a lab. And Lake Partners is one of them that are going to get some of that data for us.
But you also do sampling for a lot of that yourselves, correct?
Yeah, that test that we do for sampling in August is typically looking for lakes that are stratified that have layers of no oxygen at the bottom of the lake. They're anoxic. Really, there's not a lot of life, but a lot of rotting going on. And those are definitely an indication of the health of the lake. And it also can tell you a little bit about another source of phosphorus, which is that rotting stuff makes available more phosphorus that then can come back up into the water column. So it's a totally different type of test than I believe what this mean volume weighted one is that is suggested here. You can see we have no data in those columns just to this point. Hope that answers that.
I'll let the counselors if they have questions, and then we'll get to yours.
I don't know if the public's allowed to ask.
Oh, we'll let you. But did you have a question
Yeah,
first?
I wanted, Dennis, if you could expand a little bit. You mentioned, was it Mr. Clark? F. Clark and McKellar did some work in McKellar, and they had done a lake study there in the last year or so. Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting things that we had heard about was the kind of change in direction of thinking on the phosphorus count. A lot of McKellar, because of the great massive flooded areas and a lot of decaying stuff in the water itself, comparing what septics might do and what they found down there. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, certainly our group has changed some thoughts and ideas of where phosphorus may be coming from, and early indications from the work they did over there. They suspected that it was old septics that were causing the issues, and lack of septics and old septics. Preliminary results, it hasn't actually been published yet, Joe, but what I know, and I'll tell you again, this is where I got that comment, the loss of shoreline vegetation is the major contributor to total increases in total phosphorus. But wetlands are a significant contributor. And again, the reason why we take phosphorus samples in the spring is because that's just after the freshet, and that's likely when the total phosphorus concentrations will be at their highest. And then phosphorus is a fertilizer. Plants use it, so the concentration goes down as life forms use it up. It's a naturally occurring substance. So we're looking for the peaks, and the peaks are what get you in trouble. The old classic Lake Erie example of too much phosphates going into the water, causing algae blooms and so much vegetation growth that, it clogged the water. But phosphorus in itself is not a bad thing, just too much of it. The ability of swamps and wetlands, they're actually good absorbers of that. But what they found in McKellar last few years, again, I don't want to speak out of turn, results, because it's not published, I'll tell you, looked like some fairly heavy rains and that started to push some of that phosphorus, and it's not all being held within the wetlands, and it's moving out into the water. It looks like that was the major contributor and not septics. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other, Councilor Ram, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, Dennis, for your presentation. I certainly think the committee that was established, I guess, 18 months ago, maybe 2 years, has been a real success of this council, and I want to thank you and all the members of it. I think it's a great committee and long overdue, and again, thank you for your hard work. Not so much a question as a comment. I always get these little charts with all the really tiny words, so I have a hard time looking at it. But I knew Wawashkesh Lake was bigger, obviously, than Whitestone Lake, and I kept saying, that's the biggest lake in our whole municipality. But I didn't realize that it's 2.5 times the size of Whitestone Lake near here, roughly. That sort of surprises me. So, anyway, just a comment. The other comment that I have is that at the same size as Whitestone Lake is a lake called Island Lake, and I'm going to show my ignorance here. Where is Island Lake? Or if I missed it, but I'm not sure where it is.
Yeah, I was as surprised as anybody with some of these lakes, and I don't know, probably. Just a handful of these lakes. Well, very surprised at some of these lakes, and you can see there's very little data on them. I think they're in the northwestern portion of the municipality.
We're up near.
That's the lakes up there.
Yes, I do. Been there quite a few times. Island Lake is, it's sort of more north of Wawashkesh. It drains into Wawashkesh through Farm Creek. There is only one property on it. It's in protected lands that have been protected historically for a long time. There is a sort of a hunt camp on there. And there is a trail that you can take from Deep Bay, which goes back there and it's a great lake. It used to have, it has very good smallmouth bass fishing on it. There's not very many people get back there to take advantage of it. And it has an island right in the middle of it, which used to have one of those wooden forestry towers, fire towers. It's gone now, but it used to be there. And so in the summertime, there would be somebody sitting up on the top of that tower with binoculars looking around for forest fires back in the day. But anyway, that's where it is.
We might have to reconsider our priority then with that one if there's not a whole lot of people there. But anyway, that's another topic.
If you want to go there, by the way, in the wintertime, it's the most accessible is in the wintertime with snowmobile. There's a trail that goes right through there. Okay, are there any, Councilor Brown Matthews, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. I just wanted to say that this committee has been very excited from the get-go and has produced plenty of ideas that I think have really forwarded environmental issues in our community. I just wanted to add that in our e-newsletter coming out, there's going to be a contact information for Dennis. We're really looking for people to partner with us that have familiarity with some of these lakes to assist us in the proper place to test them in, and either to help get Dennis out or to sign yourselves up for the Lake Partner Program and start getting phosphorus data on some of these lakes that it's a hard job for one one or two people to do well on their own with the number of lakes, obviously, that we have. So any assistance would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. But- Yes, I'm just checking if Brian was, or Council Woods had a comment.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Dennis, how many lakes is it that you guys take samples on?
Mr. Mayor, I'm currently doing 7 lakes. I have consistently for quite a few years. Some of them, predate my time. Some have been tested for we have almost 25-year data sets for some of the lakes. But currently there's 7 that we've been looking at. And through the Whitestone Conservation Association, they have one of these YSI meters that can do these tests. I know Wallish Cash also used to have one, but their meter isn't functioning anymore. They're finding another way to do their testing. So that would be the 7 lakes. So I'm doing 6 and they're doing 1.
Okay.
Yeah. We have ways to go to try to get up to even 16 lakes. It's a very daunting task for one person. That's for sure.
Would you say it would be something that could be looked at as far as the municipality getting into some funding for some help? Maybe an environmental company to look at our lakes and water quality testing, involve it with lake planning and all encompassing kind of report to give us all a clear direction of where we should be going and what we should be doing?
Through Mr. Mayor, one of the things that's what we're trying to identify with this spreadsheet is to find where those gaps are and maybe look at which ones would be the best bet to start coming with the plan. Certainly, that's where you would probably some citizen scientists maybe, but rigorous type of science.
Or an environmental company.
Perhaps, but citizen scientists, run the Lake Partner Program. It's a pretty successful program that can be done. And those 2 pieces are almost all you need. That's all you need really to assess your lakes, to tell them are they or not. The rest is sort of academic research. Great stuff to know for academia, but practical terms, these are the ones we need to focus on. So the YSI meter and testing for anoxic zones is a great thing to look at. They don't use in stratified lakes, so they have to be deep. So how much you want to get looking at all those lakes, and certainly if you have very deep pockets, you certainly can spend a lot of money in a hurry with professionals. But do you need that level of scrutiny for maybe some tools for council to use in determining land development situations? I kind of think at this point, let us work through this, and we'd likely probably come back if we do need extra support, but it's not a bad idea maybe if the municipality did have their own and wanted to test, do some independent testing. It isn't tough to learn how to run it and to calibrate it, so it's not. Some people believe that you have to be a qualified person, and I argue, well, I'm not sure how you get qualified. It's you run the meter and you write down or record the results. And as long as the machine has been calibrated, then the numbers don't lie. So,
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
that's my take on it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I did promise Mr. Dupre that he could get his question, so if you'd like
I
to.
just had one question for you. It's my understanding that lawn fertilizer is a terrible contributor to phosphorus in the lake. And if that is the case, and I've been told that's the case, why don't we ban lawn fertilizer on all the lakes? Because some people have beautiful lush green lawns, I'm sure they're fertilizing. And you have situations where there's been clear cutting done from years ago when they could, and you see these, big green lawns, I'm sure they're using fertilizer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can just make a quick comment about that. Gets back to the shoreline buffer, having vegetation along the shoreline and protecting that. Zone actually absorb that phosphorus before it actually gets to the lake. Plants just use it as fertilizer, so putting in natural vegetative the solutions we could do here to start to rehabilitate some areas.
Couldn't you ban it as well?
Well, I suppose you could, but to me, if we could convince people, anytime there's a new shoreline development, it talks about not disturbing very much of the shoreline. But the enforcement to me is a bigger problem, because how much of that 2 years later, when it's sold to the next guy, he clear cuts it, puts a lawn in, builds a beach, and then we wonder why we're getting shoreline degradation. Well, the conditions for the guy that bought the property had that on there. I'm not sure the next guy has to follow that.
I think if they have to comply.
Not sure. I don't, this just my take on comments on that is, yes, fertilizer isn't a great thing, but phosphorus absorption down to the water, if you have a good natural buffer there, it will take care of it. It really will. Of course, it always helps not to put fertilizer, on top.
Okay, well, thank you again very much for your hard work, Dennis, and for your report, and it's been very interesting. We have one more delegation, and this is from the Lorimer Lake Association requesting an amendment to our current official plan. And Cecilia Parks I guess, is going to do this presentation. Cecilia?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Comrie, and all the members of council for allowing me to speak tonight. The Lorimer Lake Association would like to request that an amendment be made to the official plan regarding Lorimer Lake before the official plan review, which will begin in 2023 and take several months to complete. This is imperative to save our lake quality. Council has stated that the lake is at capacity, and they have interpreted the official plan as no new severances are allowed. And we are asking that they make this change so that the official plan reflects this understanding and practice. As you may recall, important regulations from the 2003 official plan regarding Lorimer Lake were not included on the 2016 official plan. And therefore, Lorimer Lake, being a lake that is at capacity and a trout lake, does not have any protection for new lot creation other than the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook, which is not sufficient. The Lorimer Lake Association would therefore like to request that the following statement is added to the current official plan as an amendment. Lorimer Lake is managed as a lake trout lake and has been identified as being at capacity. The Lakeshore Capacity Handbook guidelines should be for Lorimer Lake. And in addition, new lot creation will not be permitted. And it's the last few words there that are very important that we add. New lot creation will not be permitted. And that will be much more similar to what was on the 2003 official plan. So why are we requesting this? There are a number of negative effects that new can create. And Dennis did speak about some of them today. Thank you very much. New law creation causes an increase in shoreline degradation and more runoff, which has been proven to increase the phosphorus loading in our lakes. In addition, unmaintained septic systems can increase phosphorus loading in our lakes. With no required inspections needed in the municipality, this will increase the nitrogen and phosphorus going into the lake, which act as fertilizers for fast-growing bacteria and fungi. An increase in phosphorus from all the sources mentioned can cause an increased growth of algae and large aquatic plants, which can result in a level of dissolved oxygen. Trout is a very, very sensitive species and requires large amounts of oxygen to survive. Trout is already at risk with global warming as they need cold lakes to survive. And we are very proud of Lorimer Lake being a trout lake, as I'm sure Council and Mayor Comrie is as well. With the upcoming election, our 100+ members of the Lorimer Lake Association is looking for councillors who will be in favor of protecting trout lakes at capacity like Lorimer Lake. Our first delegation to council regarding this request was made in September 2021, almost a year ago. In May 2022, we made another request to council regarding this amendment to the official plan. We ask the council decide today to accept the amendment. We really appreciate your support. Thank you for the time to speak today.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. Are there questions from councilors? I suspect that we're going to end up talking about this indirectly in a few minutes in any case, but okay, so if
Am I on?
I think so.
We will end up talking about, when the next application comes through. But I don't know, is John Jackson on the line? He is, okay. So I'll ask this question of John for information for people who are here and online. What is it, if council decided to do this, and what is it that we would have to do? What's the timing of that? So for the people I understand, I guess the backdrop is, of course, that there are a lot of lakes that would feel the same way, right? I mean, we hear all the time from Wabash and other places that want us to open the official plan, like right now, and do it. And we've said the normal review of the official plan. It's a very important document. It's coming up in 2023. So, but anyway, just so everyone understands, including the association, what is it that we would have to do, and what is the timing to do that if council decided to do this? Thank you.
Go ahead, John, if you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the simple answer is council or anyone can initiate an official plan amendment, change the current policy. There would be a process by which you would have to establish a basis. I think that there are some certain scientific elements that have been discussed by this association submissions. You'd want to get that factualized so that council would be the determining body that decided that its policy structure should change. And you would hold the necessary public meetings to invite those to either support such an amendment or to oppose such an amendment. So the process would, if it's done within a specific lake, we are led to believe that that can be done under council's jurisdiction. If it's a part of a larger official plan review, it would be a matter of that the approval authority is switched to the province, which would take probably, instead of 3 to 4 months, it would probably take a year to 16 months. So it's really the prerogative of council in its wish after it's assessed the circumstances. Thank you.
Can I have one follow-up question?
Yeah, to you, Mr. Jackson. Again, just for clarity here, you're talking 3 or 4 months. The deputies of an application that we're going to be talking about very shortly. And I assume that they will be excluded from this situation. You can't just suddenly, capture someone who's here because there's timing under the Planning Act, right? So this is a futuristic thing as opposed to affecting the Dupuy application. Is that correct or not? I guess is my question.
Yes, so the way the Planning Act in Ontario works is that it is not retroactive, and therefore the assessment of an application that's before the approval authority, in this case the planning board, would be subject to those policies that were in full force and effect. So this application would be assessed based on the current day official plan policies.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else at this point? Okay, if not, and I'm conscious of the time, let's I want to, before we go out of the sort of delegation portion of the meeting, I would like to thank Cecilia for her presentation, and there will be more discussion about the general subject in a few minutes, I think. I'm going to get just a couple of resolutions to wrap up what we've done here. Would someone like to move that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone thank James Cox for the WPSEDC interim update, and that we accept his presentation for information? Can I get a move in second? Thank you. Councillor Woods moves. Councillor Lamb seconds. All those in favor? All right, thank you. That's carried. And then to our second delegation, a motion that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone thanks Dennis Morrison and the Whitestone Environmental Stewardship Committee for their efforts this past year, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone accepts the year 1 report from the Whitestone Environmental Stewardship Committee for information. Mover and seconder, Councillor McEwen moves, seconded by Councillor Woods. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. And finally, item 4.3, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone thanks Cecilia Parks for his presentation and proposed changes to the official plan for Lorimer Lake. Moved by Councillor Gordon Matthews, seconded by Councillor Woods. All those in favor? All right, thank you. That's carried. So now entertain a motion to move in the committee of the whole for consideration of a planning item. It's really just one item, I guess. Moved and seconded, moved by Councillor Woods, seconded by Councillor Lamb. at this meeting, the Amendment Committee in the whole at 7:43 PM. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. So we have then a consent item. Sorry, not a consent item. We have a planning item. And anyway, I was trying to get back to the start of it. Item 5.1. We have a report from Mr. Jackson, his capacity as Secretary of the Planning Board. So, John, I will turn it over to you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, members of the public. This is an application for a property at the southeast corner of Lorimer Lake, adjacent to the Lorimer Lake Resort. The owner has 700 meters of frontage along Lorimer Lake with about 10 hectares or 25 acres of land area. The owner wishes to create three new lots, new waterfront lots, having a minimum frontage of 90 meters and more than 0.6 hectares of lot area. The owner was advised of the general concerns surrounding new development on the Lorimer Lake shoreline, and as a result, he retained the services of an environmental consultant. The environmental consultants carried out an assessment of the various natural heritage features that land use planning applications must have regard to, including wetlands, for example, lake capacity, endangered and threatened species. This assessment was carried out, and the conclusion of the assessment was that, subject to the recommendation and mitigation, that the property would be suitable for the creation of three new lots in accord with provincial policies and also the Whitestone official plan. I believe that the consultants have representatives in the meeting, Your Worship, and perhaps they could be asked to explain perhaps more of what kinds of assessments are undertaken to come to that conclusion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It is.
Hi.
All
Can
right,
everyone hear me?
so that's Mr. Vader. All right, I recognize. Okay, if you, we
Yeah,
have your
so-
report in front of you, but if you would like to briefly summarize what.
Sure, thank you. So I believe you have actually one or two reports that we did on the property in front of you. By way of introduction, my name is David Leader. I'm a senior environmental scientist and president of Hutchinson Environmental Sciences. And I have 19 years of professional environmental consulting experience. We did two particular pieces of work for Mr. Dupre to satisfy both voluntary and advisable environmental studies for the property and those that would be required under the official plan for a severance application. So the studies that are required for a severance application consist of a site-specific septic suitability assessment, which is in keeping with the Ontario Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook and guidance associated with it, as well as two other Ontario protocols that are required for assessing hydrogeological conditions and site-specific conditions for a septic. The second part of the study that we did was related to potential species at risk and sensitivities that would be associated with the severances. And Sarah Aiken, who's our senior scientist that deals with species at risk, who's responsible for those studies, and she can provide a brief summary for that in a minute. The portion of the study that I'll talk about is the site-specific septic assessment. And in summary on that, the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook, it has a set of generic criteria that you can meet, and then you have site-specific criteria that you can meet. And the purpose behind that is that the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook has a series of very generic and overly protective assumptions in it to protect lakes from a variety of stressors. And if you do a site-specific assessment, you can understand, what the actual conditions are that could cause a concern for the lake, and make a decision on if there's an actual concern from a property, should it have a septic system put on it. So in summary, the findings of that study were that no, in this particular case, there is no concern for the water quality of the lake for a variety of reasons. Two of the most important being that the septics, should the properties be developed, there would be a voluntary requirement for the septics to be south of a drainage divide, and they would not ultimately drain towards Lorimer Lake should there be an issue. But on top of that, the soil quality on the properties is sufficient to treat septic effluent. And to be extra precautious, I'll say, we also recommended that it's a condition of severance should there be development on the properties that those septics have enhanced and raised beds on them, so that all septic effluent would be treated before it would have an opportunity to reach the soil, and that would be a maintenance-free system over time. So as far as lakeshore capacity goes, there was no concern with the severance that Mr. Dupre proposed. Sarah, maybe if you can just give a 2-minute high-level summary of what you found in the EIS, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Sarah Aiken, a senior ecologist with Hutchinson Environmental. So I was responsible for completing the environmental impact study, which was requested by Mr. Dupre. So as part of our study, we completed a background review for the property, which included multiple sources, Natural Heritage Information Center, MECP, a couple of other sites that identified any potential species at risk within the vicinity of the subject property. With that information, we then completed ecological land classification of the property, which included classifying the vegetation communities as part of that protocol. That information was then used to identify any potential habitat for any of the species at risk that were identified through the background review, as well as identify any significant wildlife habitat on the property as well. So through the study, we did identify potential habitat for Blanding's turtle in the sense of Lorimer Lake may provide overwintering habitat. And therefore, through the EIS process, we did apply a 30-meter buffer, which is a requirement by MECP as part of the habitat description for Blanding's habitat. So we applied a 30-meter buffer to the property. Another buffer that was applied was the 10-meter buffer to the environmental protection areas as required by the Whitestone official plan. So the property was buffered. And through this, we were able to identify constraints and then an area of the property that could be developed. And so in our report, we have provided mapping that shows the 3 proposed lots, as well as areas that show the buffers, the 30-meter buffers, and then present the area that can be developed. And if there is any, so we essentially indicated that the severance wouldn't show any harm. And we also provided some mitigation measures for any future development. If the lots were to be developed, we provided mitigation measures such as erosion sediment control plans, timing windows for tree removal, the setbacks as well. And then a recommendation as well for any future development would be to consult with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks as well, to determine if there's any requirements under the Endangered Species Act for any future development.
And maybe just to follow up on that, Sarah, to be clear, at this point in time, Mr. Dupre doesn't have any intent on developing these lots. These are lots that he wants to sever as part of succession planning for his family. Our studies were conducted commensurate to that. If in the future someone decides that they want to put cottages on it, they would pick up from the report that we did. And before any buildings or driveways would be approved, they would have to undergo a review by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, which would probably result in further restrictions on the property and help to protect the environmental quality of the Lorimer Lake. And that doesn't just pertain to, say water chemistry or soil chemistry or species at risk. That would also help to protect the character of the lake, having in place some of those shoreline buffers that Sarah mentioned. So it's not like, the days of being able to buy a lot and clear cut down to the water, those are sort of bygones now. And in this case, there's already restrictions and voluntary restrictions on the property to prevent that sort of thing from happening. So that's a bit of the broader context as well.
Okay, thank you. I guess we're ready for questions and comments from councillors. Did you wish to speak further, or are you relying on your consultants?
Sorry.
Sorry. Normally you would be entitled to speak, but I thought perhaps you would defer that to your. No? Please, okay.
So then,
Testing. So when David Leader came out to do an assessment of the property, I showed him where I wanted the septic beds to go because I wanted them to drain as far away from Lorimer Lake as possible. He didn't think that was necessary, but with the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook, it states in there that a septic bed should be either 300 meters away from the lake or drain 300 meters before it enters the lake. So I said, by putting these septic beds in these locations, even though if there eventually is a building built on these lots, they would have to pump liquid up to the septic bed, and then it would drain away from Lorimer Lake. And in the situation of the first two lots, they drain more than 400 meters away from Lorimer Lake. And the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook suggests 300 meters. So two of those lots drain over 400 meters away from Lorimer Lake. And the third lot drains 283 meters away from Lorimer Lake. David did not think that was necessary, but we're on the lake as well. We want protection for the lake. So it was, and he said, you're going to kind of be bound by doing what you're doing. And I said, that's fine. I mean, it's people will have to pump their liquid up to their septic bed. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Questions from councillors or comments? Councillor McEwen, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is for the Hutchinson Group, Sciences Limited, Environmental Sciences Limited, sorry, or Mr. Jackson, but when I reviewed Mr. Jackson's report and I look at lot 3, which is 125.7 meters of frontage, the sketch on page 5 of his report, shows the 125-meter measurement kind of going away from the lake on an angle. Therefore, I'm not sure where the 125 meters comes in. However, when I look at the, I guess it's an overhead, and I'm questioning the accuracy, I guess, of what is on the Hutchinson report. I believe it's page 11. And it shows that the lake does in fact go back in a bay form, which I guess would give it the 125 feet, 125 meters. Could someone maybe speak to that? Thank you.
I think your worship.
Mr. Jackson, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the way the bylaw definition for frontage would include the distance, but the straight line distance between the two sidelines, that would be determined on the survey. So it would technically have that 125 meter frontage as defined by the bylaw.
Okay, that's fine then. I was just questioning the discrepancy in the pictorial part of it, I guess, from yours is more of a sketch, I guess, than the Hutchinson report. Is that correct?
It could, as I say, it goes down to the actual survey, which would be between the two sidelines where they intersect the navigable water or the high water mark.
Okay, thank you.
Who wishes to go next? Any? Councillor Ron Matthews.
Thank you. So I guess this is a question for Mr. Jackson. Ever since I've been on council, it's always been my understanding that Lorimer Lake was closed for creating more lots, as well as Limestone and Fairholme, I believe. I'm just trying to figure out what kind of precedence does this set? Are we not actually closed? This was just something that people have said, and it wasn't actually closed. And if we approve this one, does that mean that somebody on Fairholme can next subdivide and make more lots, and somebody on Limestone? I'm just not clear on what this all means.
Yes, through your worship, lake trout lakes are all protected as provincial interests. The policy that is in place for all those lakes is fairly consistent, and that is that any new lot creation has to be in accord with the guidelines or the tool that's referred to in the Hutchinson report called the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook, which the policies speak to directly. And those particular provincial criteria do not, how should I say, freeze lake trout lakes. They really want to make sure that there is no degradation of the water quality by any lot creation. And so in the first instance, they take a position that if you're placing a septic system 300 meters away or separating existing dwellings where the count of existing septic systems already is in the budget, so to speak, or if there is science that can apply to conclude that no further degradation will occur, will all meet those criteria. So it's never been the case where those lake trout lakes are ever frozen, including the province's position, rather than that they must meet the criteria set out in the handbook. And so that we really haven't changed that in the last years, and that was essentially when the handbook became a tool presented by the province on May 10th, 2010. So it may have been a misinterpretation, but that policy in the books in terms of our official plan and the province for a number of years.
And Mr. Jackson, if I could just maybe add something through your worship. In this particular case, not all sites are created equal, hence why site-specific assessments can be done. So in this particular case, there's 3 levels of protection that are available on this lot or on these lots that led us to our conclusions. Number 1 is that the native soil chemistry, if septic effluent were to be treated by that soil, the native soil chemistry will treat that septic effluent within between 1 and 10 meters of its point of contact with the ground. Number 2 is that you know, the drainage is away from Lorimer Lake, as Mr. Dupre said. And number 3 is that we opted to say, instead of using native soil, use an enhanced treatment raised bed that should treat all of that septic effluent if it's constructed properly, and they are constructed according to Ontario Building Code and inspected accordingly. They'll treat septic effluent in about 1 meter of its point of contact. And then there's also the additional, should there ever be an issue, there's also the additional safety capacity that the native soil has. So in this case, we had 3 layers of protection that we felt fairly comfortable that there weren't going to be any adverse effects or phosphorus migrating to Lorimer Lake from the septics.
Okay, Councilor Lamb, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow up on what Councilor Gordon Matthews says.
Can you move your mic a little closer? Sorry, I just want to make sure that folks on the
I'm just gonna follow
Zoom can hear.
up on what Councilor Gordon Matthews said. I've been on this council for 15 years, and I can remember, John, that because I was of the opinion that Lorimer Lake was closed also. And I think it even goes further than that. I can remember counting down from 5 lots in 5 years. It was, you know, it was only going to be 5 lots developed over a 5-year period, and then that was it. And we counted down from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and then it finished. And I agree that the wording in the official plan may seem different, but I know what the intent of the council was at that time. So I'm missing something here. And again, I appreciate the application. I appreciate all the environmental studies and everything else. But it's grief to me how we got here, because something's gone astray. And so, John, help me. Because I remember going through this, and so do you.
If I can help you.
If I'm not mistaken, maybe the last one were people called the Robins, but I might be wrong. That may have been the last of the series, but I may be wrong on that. But anyway, I remember it distinctly.
Yes, if I can, Your Worship, the charter official plan emerged when Whitestone was created in 2003, when it was first considered, keeping in mind that Lorimer Lake was part of the municipality of McDougall, as well as the new municipality of Whitestone. And before those municipalities emerged to, in fact, regulate those lakes, the policy that the province instilled was a policy that really wouldn't support any further consents. It didn't have necessarily any basis on it, but what we did as sister municipalities is that we created a quota system between McDougall and Whitestone that allowed for a new lot to be created over a 10-year period, 1 per year per municipality. And so that policy was in place, and your memory is quite correct. It wasn't a prohibition, however. It was a quota system that was somewhat designed as a hybrid to limit the amount of new development and therefore additional traffic on the lake. But that was replaced with a blanket position after the province instituted this new handbook guideline or tool for lake planning. And lake planning is not static, it's been dynamic. And what we've seen in the science over the years is that there's been an understanding that the original hypothesis that phosphorus nutrient would essentially migrate to the surface waters was in fact in error on Canadian shield soils, which were heavily mineralized. So in one sense, as David Leader describes, there's even a fourth layer, and that is the fact that mineralized soils on the shield bind the phosphorus chemical so that it doesn't migrate to the lake. And on that basis, it seemed to be the replacement, logical replacement to the quota system was to ensure that the science was done. And as David describes, you look at each individual circumstance to make that determination, as well as the suspenders on belts to two other layers. So your memory is correct. It was into a quota system, but then replaced by the new provincial approach that's set out in the Lakeshore capacity assessment.
And excuse me, when did we make that change? When we put the new official plan in? Was that the time?
That's correct. That's correct.
Boy, I don't think a lot of people understood that at the time. But anyway, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
A lot of people are and continue to be thinking that the lake is at capacity and under development, but I guess they're asking for it tonight earlier. And so I guess you help clarify that situation. I just have one more question. It's really, I guess, more to Mr. Dupuy and the new right of way, I guess, coming in from the highway that's to be constructed. And it says to avoid any conflicts with the lodge. I think it says in here somewhere. So would these lots have a right of way through the lodge right now?
They would, yes.
They would. You don't have to do this new existing right
That's
of way.
right.
You're just choosing to do it
That's
so that you won't have any conflict.
the lots would have two legal deeded rights.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Councilor Woods?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This would be to John. So the Dupuys are asking to create these 3 new lots. And I was always told the same as everybody else. I said you that Lower Lake was a closed lake. Has any new lot been created on the legal side of the lake?
I'm sorry, Brian, can you repeat that?
Side of the lake.
Your worship, did you catch that, your worship?
Yes, the answer to his question is yes, he wants to buy any lots created on the Google side since that, well, recently, let's say. And the answer is yes, you know about them, right?
Yeah, so how many lots have been created under the new policy?
Well, he asked if any had been created.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, sorry. It was a lot of reverbs going on there. And the answer through you, your worship, is yes, there's been half a dozen created.
Okay, thank you.
So, go ahead, Councilor.
Anyway, and John, the language in the McDougall official plan with respect to Lorimer Lake and this subject is identical?
Ditto. Identical.
Ditto. So it's identical to ours.
Yes.
And lots have been created there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor McKeon.
Yeah, it's a comment, possibly more than a question, but it goes back to when I was running for council in 2014 to 2015, or the year 2015, I believe. I visited several people on every lake, basically, and certainly not without exception on Lorimer Lake. And it was brought quite clear to me at that time that the LCAH handbook was a governing factor. So I had a copy of that prepared and studied it. And my personal feeling was it became more of an assessment process using that book to be real certain and careful with these cold water lakes. I know it's changed considerably. And the thinking has changed and it hasn't been updated since 2010. That's quite a while. But following those guidelines, and I guess secondly, a comment that I've been on Lorimer a lot of times over my career, and growing up in the area, I fished in that area years and years ago. A lot of that lake is crown land, I believe, like 80% worth. So as long as we are very careful and specific on how we address the severances and requests for that lake, I'm very hopeful and I feel fairly confident having the report from Hutchinson this evening that we should be able to proceed with these lakes with caution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess the way that I look at this situation, I recall very well the previous discussions Councilor Lamb referred to, and my understanding was that we had agreed that there was no new development to take place after that countdown that he referred to. And I kind of, when it was drawn to my attention by some folks that there was this reference to LCAH, that somehow or other that had crept in that revision because it was also being used by McDougall. And it was there in order to make whatever we said the same as whatever McDougall said in their official plan. But I honestly didn't think it was there. And so it really, I guess the problem that I have with this whole thing is that it gets back to the question of what do we mean by capacity. So all of this discussion and all of the environmental report has to do with whether or not septic systems will pollute or really has to do with phosphorus. And capacity, I mean, I'm not suggesting that that isn't important, but you can design a septic system that's not going to pollute without LCAH. And we've been doing it for a long time. I'm not suggesting that there aren't some that pollute, but that's usually the condition of them that they get into after a period of time, which is an entirely different matter because it's not a planning matter. That's what happens in execution. So, I mean, there are a lot of other things that go into capacity. It's the number of boats that are on the lake. It's the number of cottages that are on the lake. It's how much shoreline is actually occupied and being used. And that's, that's obviously a factor in things like, species at risk and habitat destruction and that kind of thing. But it's also a matter of capacity is also a matter of how many people are out on the lake at a given point in time running their sea-doos or water skiing or whatever they're doing and so on. And it's relative to the size of the lake. It's not necessarily a matter of trout of even whether it's just good for trout. Those are all just factors. So perhaps we did not do a proper study to determine what capacity would look like in terms of all of those factors that we're talking about. But it seems to me that we're kind of following down this path of logic, which is, you develop with conventional development, which is which is what we've been doing all along, right? You develop with conventional development until you start to get some concerned about various things, and then you start trying to change the rules. And my question is, if this is the way we're going to go forward, at what point do we realize that we've gone too far? You know, and that point is going to be when there is basically no developable shoreline left. You know, so as long as somebody can find the necessary number of meters, we're good to go. And historically, that's the way we've operated. And we have changed the number of meters on different lakes over the years, but that's kind of the model we're following. And I'm questioning the wisdom of that. It's, you know, the teeth in LCH really is not a planning tool, and I think Mr. Jackson has kind of discredited it as a planning tool. It's a tool that the municipality would then have to use at execution time when somebody goes to build something. And yes, we can we can require the developer to enter into an agreement. But that then, of course, means that we have to do something that we haven't historically done, which is to go out and do site plan control, look at exactly where everything goes, check to make sure it's all right. And presumably, I assume what we would also do is we would require, you know, septic system inspections every 5 years and all kinds of other things to make sure that the people that are occupying the property in perpetuity down the road, whatever that is, are not coming in and just doing whatever they want with their site within the limits of the site plan, which is the site planning bylaw, which is how we work today, right? So, I mean, I have to say, I'm just uneasy about where we are, and I'm uneasy about the fact that we really. Our understanding was that there wasn't going to be any more development after those 10 lots over 5 years that Mr. Jackson referred to was up. And you know, we had a request from the Aurora Lake Association to make an amendment to the official plan, and that came in a year ago or so. And we didn't act on it. Why? Because we thought, well, it doesn't really matter in the short run, and eventually we're going to go back and look at this when we do a major review. So now we're in a situation where where all of a sudden this is the first application we've received since the meter ran out on the 10 lots. And you know, if we kill this one, how many more do we get before we get a chance to go back and revise the official plan to remove this reference to the LCH, which is what I suspect might very well happen. So I guess that's the you know, I mean, I still have this unease about it, and I'm quite satisfied that you can you can develop and avoid the situation where there is phosphorus running off into the lake. It's not my concern. And that's what the environmental report is focused on. But I don't see how the other things are being addressed. So anyway, we do have a couple of folks from the Aurora Lake Association who are on the line, and I see who I know how to speak to this. So perhaps we could ask them. Gary Monahan, I think you're first. So
yeah. Thank you very much, Your Worship. And just to address a few things that were said before I get to my prepared remarks, is there is no Crown land on Lorimer Lake. It's all owned by people. And what Mr. Jackson failed to say is that the final draft of the McDougall's next 5-year plan restricts the number of severances on the McDougall side of the lake to 1 per year, and no one person can have more than one in a 5-year period. And so they listened to our concerns back when we put them in September, and they made those changes. And then just the other thing about the reference to the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook in both the current Whitestone and McDougall plans is that when I was at the McDougall meeting when it was approved, and the impression of council then and the impression of us leaving that meeting was that there was going to be no new severances. And the feeling was the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook was so restrictive, there wouldn't be any. So everyone left the meeting with that intent. Now it turns out it's not as strong as we thought at the time. But just to get to my prepared remarks, and I just want to say that starting off, that opposing someone who resides on the lake is one of my least favorite things to do. And my apologies to the Dupreys. I also like to state that we just found out about this a few days ago, so we haven't had a chance to look into every aspect of it. But what we have had a chance to look into is that the shoreline in question in 2016 was zoned as WF3. And to our knowledge, council never approved it to be changed to WF1. And it's our belief that it was changed at the same time as the wetlands got changed when they changed from the AutoCAD to the new system. So it was changed without merit, without council's knowledge or approval whatsoever. Just like in the store, when something's been labeled incorrectly, in the story, they'll give you the lower price, but that doesn't work for zoning. Council has to prove that. And we ask that council change it back or restore it back to the WF3. It is WF3, it's just labeled incorrectly. Now, with WF3, you have to have a frontage of 150 meters. And that's what I always remembered. I couldn't understand why all of a sudden it was 90 meters, but now I understand with that change that likely happened in 2018, that's what happened. But if indeed council does decide that it is WF3 and it's 150 meters, then I think you have to relook at that proposal, the submission, because they will not be able to have 3 severances. I think everyone's talked in length about how council spoke to us repeatedly that there would be no new severances. And I truly believe that council, when they were telling us that in September and in May and other times, that they believe that. And I believe that that was their intent, that there would be no new severances. And that sort of has to mean something. We sort of saw the loophole because there was a severance on the McDougall side where they were able to get their severance because any good planner can find a way using the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook to make it work. And so that's why we went to McDougall and we went to Whitestone in September and asked for the change in the plan to close that loophole. And we asked again in May. So we truly believe that council's intent was to have no new severances, and perhaps as his worship had talked about, maybe that means something. And just to take some quotes from the May 3rd meeting, some of the quotes were, "For all intent and purposes, there is no new lot creation on Lorimer Lake." Another quote, "Why would we ask for lake frontage of 150 meters when in fact no new lots would be created?" And finally, "The LCAH is mute because there will be no new lots created." Going to Mr. Jackson's argument about the new science has made the LCAH out of date, we respectively disagree with that. That argument has been made for a number of years now, and the province still abides by the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook. And also the Whitestone official plan also in several locations states that the LCH is rules. And just paraphrase some of them, 17.0.1, new lot creation may only be considered in accordance with the LCAH. 13.04.1, the municipality supports the tenets of the guidelines set out in the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook, as well as the former provincial water objections. 13.04.2, development on or upstream of any of these lakes that are deemed to be at capacity shall only occur in accordance with the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook. Back in June 24, 2015, there was an OMB ruling on the Dupre's property. Involved, and in that they recognized the legitimacy of the LCAH. A number of provincial ministries testified at that hearing: Mr. Scholten, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Zaya, Ms. White, and they all supported the tenets of the LCAH at the hearing. And what the board said in its decision: the board is mindful of the testimony and expert opinion evidence provided by the applicant's witnesses, Mr. Scholten, Mr. Alexander, Ms. White. Therefore, the board finds that the development should not only be subject to the recommendations outlined in the Beacon report, but that it should also meet the requirements of the LCAH and the municipality operating plan. Meeting the requirements of the LCAH can be accomplished by locating the sewage system to drain more than 300 meters from the Lorimer Lake. So this is evidence that the OMB recognizes the legitimacy of this, the Lorimer Lake, the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook. I won't go into about the septics. Mr. Dupre has talked about that he wants to put it 300 meters. That's also something that the OMB had said it should be. And thank you to Mr. Dupre for saying that. Lot measurements, Mr. Jackson's drawings of the lot boundaries, we believe has some errors. It shows the Dupre's property line, including the limestone waterfall. That's part of that 125 feet where actually it belongs to the resort. We're still looking into that, but that's what I've been told. And also, I don't quite understand how that line that goes away from the lake is considered shoreline. And also, as I said, part of that may be someone else's property. And as the mayor and as Dennis said, and as Cecilia said, new development affects the lakes outside of septic systems. And I won't go on to all the things that they talked about. But I think, all of the points I talked about, especially the fact that it is WF3, should be reason to look at this application and at least put it on hold so the zoning can be looked at and decided on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I wonder if Mr. Jackson would comment on the WF1 versus WF3. Is he still here? Is he still with us?
Sorry, I must leave. Please divide council, my apologies.
Could I answer that question?
You can see.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was just.
Yeah, you need to use the mic for sure. Yeah.
You do have your zoning maps on your website for the municipality of Whitestone. My property is zoned WF1, where Mr. Monahan is getting this WF3 from. I have no idea.
Well, it was previously WF3. I think that's been established. The question was, how did it get changed? And that's why I was hoping that Mr. Jackson might be in a position to comment on that, but if he isn't, then. Well.
I know what WF3 is. I mean, I know what WF1 is. What's WF3?
There are three, WF1, 2, and 3 are different categories.
But if you look at the mapping of Lorimer Lake, everything on the lake is WF1, except for the commercial property, which is Lorimer Lake Resort. So why would our property be WF3 when every single waterfront property on Lorimer Lake is WF1?
If I can speak, Your Worship, they all were WF3. And when the mapping system was changed over, from the CAD drawings to the other one, it automatically changed it to WF1, just like it changed the wetlands from EP to C2.
Okay, well,
They
I
all
guess
should be
we'll
WF3.
solve that this evening, but in any case, let me just ask, is there any other discussion about this while we're while we have the applicants here?
Hi, Mr. Mayor, it's Robert Duda. I'd love to ask a question.
Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, my question is for Mr. Jackson, but I'm not sure if it's on. He's still on. The question is related to the capacity assessment and whether the capacity assessments are in the official plan or a bylaw, and therefore can be enforceable. The second question was regarding it's probably for the environmental consultant, regarding the Blanding turtle and the 30-meter distance. It seems pretty excessive. They're just making an educated guess that there's Blanding turtle, and they've included 30 meters. Wanted to understand why. Thank you.
Okay, well, you get an answer to your second question, I think, from our species at risk, from the species at risk consultant. Go ahead.
So, sorry, your question was why did we apply the 30-meter buffer?
Yes. So there's many species of risk. The Blanding turtle is assumed to be there. I didn't see any verification that was there. So the assumption is let's just put 30 meters around the property and call it a day. And that constrains the landowner and puts a lot of restrictive covenants on. And if it's not being seen, it's not been validated, it shouldn't be a stated 30 meters. Shouldn't it just be hey, there could be turtles there, please be cautious. Under the Species of Risk Act, is it not the proponent that ultimately determines and assesses the species at risk? And so I just want to understand why just include 30 meters? Why not validate it? Why not do something? It's pretty restrictive.
Yeah, and so our study here was it was high level. It was a screening. And so the Blanding's turtle was one that was identified with potential habitat along the shoreline. And so that was part of our recommendation is if any future development were to proceed, that future landowner should consult with MECP. And at that point, they could also do any future studies to determine if in fact there are Blanding's turtle using that area. And they can consult with MECP to determine if that 30-meter buffer is in fact required. But at this point, because we were doing a high-level constraints analysis, we included that 30-meter buffer.
Okay, so there's no restrictive covenant that you're applying to this application on the 30 meters. It's only a recommendation. It's not a requirement. And future study is another recommendation because it's just not proven that there's a Blanding turtle there. And this has serious implications for all applications. It has serious implications for all property owners, and that they can't do anything on their properties, even existing landowners and waterfront owners, because there's just this 30-meter barrier put up for no reason. Anyway, thank you for the question, or the answer.
Okay, thank you. All right.
You can't get Mr. Jackson back.
We can or we can't?
He'll call you. He's traveling.
Oh,
I just need to give him a phone number. If you give me a moment.
Yeah, it'd be great if I could get some direction on whether it's in the official plan or whether it's a bylaw requirement. Discussion by council about no new capacity is sort of a verbal discussion. And really, should it not be a legal requirement, a bylaw? That's just a question for Mr. Jackson.
no, we don't need Mr. Jackson to answer that. The official plan states what was read earlier in the meeting, I could go back and find it. It was in, actually in Cecilia Park's presentation. The way that the current bylaw reads, sorry, I'm just going to flip back through my pages and get it for you. What it says right now, as of this particular moment, is Lorimer Lake is managed as a lake trout lake, and the lake has been identified as being at capacity. New lot creation may only be considered in accordance with the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook, or LCAH. That's the way it reads as of the moment, and that's the way the McDougall official plan reads with respect to the lake. So yeah, it's in the official plan. There isn't anything further in any other bylaws or the zoning bylaw or any other bylaw that talks about these matters.
Oh, okay. That's very helpful. So there's no other bylaws, no other stipulations or requirements. Okay, thank you.
So are we going to get John back, or should be?
I've given him the phone number of the
All
ID.
right,
Just watch for him to call him.
participants, see if he's. Well, I wonder if what we might do, just so we here's the time effectively, if we were to reconvene to a regular meeting, we can still ask him to reply when we get back, and we can move ahead and do the consent agenda or something and come back to that if that's. Let's try that as a strategy. Can I get a motion to reconvene to regular meeting, please? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gordon Matthews, that we move into regular meeting it is 8:40 p.m. All those in favor? Right. I suppose the other thing we could do, does anyone wish to take a break at this point for 5 minutes? Would that? All right, we have a couple of hands up. Let's have a very brief recess, and we'll pick it up in 5 minutes.
I'll hobble over. One phone, excuse me. I heard you were out, well, I didn't know it was you, but it looks like it was you. You were out our way, were you?
No, I'm sure I can send him.
Also, so it's the M&R.
So I don't see. Yes.
You can just tell it's a big helicopter. I'll see it. If I've seen it, I would.
Yes, I'll do it as well. I see. Yes.
Oh. I never mind it.
The instructions. Every 2 hours, change. Yes, I knew these miners were. Yeah.
I got through Saturday. That too Saturday. Pretty sore. I'm not gonna be able to walk.
John, you've joined us, have you?
Yep, I pulled over.
Sorry for
pulled
that.
over.
Just finishing a break. So if you could stand by just for another minute or two, we'll gather everyone together. And I think there's just a couple of quick questions for you as we finalize this item.
Sorry, I thought you.
It was meeting general, not like ours.
Oh.
Well, I was too, so that's where I found out was that, right? Anyway, I got some.
Hi Joyce, I'm Michelle Hendry. Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming out.
It's been really warm. You know, so.
I actually understand.
But, you know.
Oh, I said I don't.
Association.
It was so.
And he said to somebody, well, you wouldn't miss this meeting for the world, but you would definitely miss standing up in front.
Yeah. He did a good job. He was getting tired of us reading the last few years. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess we should go back and pick it up. I think we lost
Sunday. So, yeah.
Yes, yes.
We need to get back on this.
We have John on.
Going to wave everybody in?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
It's 1566.
Well, that one.
That's John. Jackson.
All right, and thank you, folks, for your indulgence. For the folks who are on Zoom, we're back to order again. And the next item that we would have normally would be matters arising from the committee of the whole. But we do have John Jackson back on the call now on the phone. John, one of the questions that was asked, or one of the issues that was raised, was that these the properties in question, and I gather a number of the properties on Lorimer Lake were originally zoned waterfront 3 and have now been moved to waterfront 1. And the question was, did that happen in conjunction with the removal of the designation of the wetlands? And it clearly it had some impact on what the minimum frontage is. So I wonder if you could comment on that from your recollection of what.
I think the answer was that all of the lakes in the whole of the municipality of Whitestone were established at a 90-meter standard, and the purpose of the former lot standard differentiation for Lorimer was that it accompanied the quota system that was being replaced by the new regime, including the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook, where it wasn't the frontage issue associated with the limited quota growth any longer. So it was just part and parcel of saying we're going to make the whole of the municipality consistent in terms of the standards.
But they aren't now. Not all the lakes don't have the same minimum frontage, do they?
The only difference is Wawashkash, which has 100 meters, but all other lakes are 90.
So what would the rationale have been though for going from 150 to 90?
Well, as I said, just to be consistent with all of the lakes in the municipality, it was decided that there was no need to have the special criteria for that lake, given the abandonment of the former one lot per year policy. It was married to that. I can't recall exactly the relationship, but that was done most intentionally. And regardless of the history of it, the zoning is the zoning. It's what it is today. That's what was in effect in the municipality.
Yeah, I agree with you. It just seems odd to me. I mean, I think you don't remember any of the discussion, but it seems odd to me that if you're on the one hand, you're saying something is at capacity, and then you say, well, we're going to reduce the size of the frontage of the
capacity. Yeah, but the capacity issue had nothing to do with the performance standard.
Sorry, it had nothing to do with what?
The performance standard set out in the zoning criteria.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what that means, but.
Well, I mean, whether or not it was 90 or meters or 120 or 150, it didn't have anything to do with the capacity of the lake in terms of its water quality. There was no relationship to that, those two requirements.
Well, all right. I guess what I hear you saying is that capacity to you only means water, is only in terms of water quality then. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think that there was a conscious decision to say that a 90-meter frontage lot on a lake looked after those other parameters, whether they be social indicators or boat traffic indicators, et cetera. They weren't ignored. I mean, 90 meters is a pretty handsome standard.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just ask then if before we move off this, or before we move to considering a resolution, are there any other questions for Mr. Jackson that you wanted to get an answer to? Councilor Lamb.
I don't know whether, is this on? I don't know whether it's a question or just a comment, because, you know, the reality up here is we've got an application, and I'll speak to it when we get out of closed and we have a motion. But I'm really struggling, as I think the mayor is and others, as to how we got from what we thought was a closed lake to where we are today. And I can tell you, as probably the only person up here who was on the official plan review when it occurred some years ago, that there weren't a lot of people involved in it. think next year when it comes up again, there'll be a lot more people involved, but there weren't a lot of people. And I don't think the Lorimer Lake Association was as informative and involved as they certainly are now. So I don't know how that got in, but I don't remember, when I say got in, how the more lot creation is possible, as long as you follow the handbook and that sort of thing. I don't know how that got in because I don't remember a robust discussion on this at all at council. So we got hooped. Everybody kind of got hooped. And maybe it's the right thing to do. I don't know. But I'm stunned that it's in there. As the mayor said, I think this is the first application in years that we've had for after we thought it was, I thought it was closed. So, but the reality is you have to deal with the cards you're dealt, and you've got to deal with the dance with the girl you came with, or whatever the saying is, right? So I'll talk to that when we come to the actual application. Everyone has to realize, I think, here that maybe everyone does, that all we do is this a case where we just make a recommendation to the planning board, and the planning board ultimately makes the decision. And whatever that decision is, again, as we've had so many lately, people have to recognize that there's another level beyond here for either party, and that's the OMB. So, John, I hope when we come out of the committee, the whole, and we have a discussion.
We are out. We are out.
Oh, we're out.
But we need a motion on it. We need a motion on the floor.
I'm making a motion. So give us level to make the motion, and I'll speak to John. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just one more question for John, if I may. Has there ever been a lake plan or a lake planning study for Lorimer Lake that you're aware of?
No. No.
Okay. Oh, okay, Councilor McGinn has a question. Go ahead.
What was their question?
Ask for a motion on the floor, because now that we're at a committee, we're not supposed to be just talking, we're supposed to be speaking the motions.
Mr. Jackson, I was new on council when we did the official plan last time around, 2016, I guess it was. And I remember quite distinctly some of these numbers. And is it not correct that we've gone from 100 feet, which is 30 meters on a whole lot of the old subdivisions on, say, Whitestone Lake and some of the surrounding lakes, to up to 60 meters, and now talking 90 meters. And I don't think we should discredit 90 meters personally. 90 meters is 300 feet. Like that's a pretty good chunk of shoreline. Granted, 150 meters is getting up in the 490 feet. It's considerably bigger. But any comments on the movement and shift over the years in going up to the 90 meter mark as being the standard, which I think for the most part is pretty significant?
Yeah, you've captured the evolution quite correctly. I think that pre-rules, when there was really no land use planning program, the 30 meter lot was the standard. You'll see many of those throughout the municipality. And they were really carried out under, I'll call it pre-subdivision days, prior to 1971. The first rules that came along in Hagerman as the first of the municipalities to establish zoning went to 60 meters. And when Whitestone was formed, it seemed to be very much interested in increasing that standard, so the density ultimately would end up at 90 meters, and that was thought to be a pretty good size for maintaining privacy while protecting other interests on the lake, whether it was private properties or the interests of fulfilling recreational needs. The only exception, as I said to that, was Wawashkashen, that was kind of an interesting, I suppose, submission that they wanted to be the same as the archipelago standard, although I didn't really see any relevance to that. But so it's 100, where every other body of water in Whitestone is 90. So you're right. The evolution kept going up and up and up, and who knows where it would end up. But 90 seemed to be a good sort of comfort zone for all the parties' interests out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, then. What we would normally do at this point is we would introduce or we would ask for a motion to make a recommendation to the planning board. And so normally these are expressed in positive terms. And there is a motion that was drafted for this purpose. I'm going to read it to you and then see if there's a mover and seconder. Whereas John Jackson Planner Inc. has prepared a report for the Parry Sound Area Planning Board regarding consent application B36/2022W. The applicants are the Dupreys, and provided a copy to the municipality of Whitestone. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receives this report as information, and that the council of the municipality of Whitestone recommends this consent application for approval in principle, subject to the following conditions. 1, that payment of a parkland dedication fee be made in accordance with the current municipal fees and charges by law. 2, that the new lots receive 911 addressing from the municipality. 3, that the applicants enter into a section 5126 consent agreement with the municipality of Whitestone, be registered on title to the effect that the owners of the severed lots be responsible for A, the implementation of all recommended mitigation measures as set out in the Hutchinson Environmental Sciences Report dated July 4th, 2022. B, the private road access to the lots and will indemnify the municipality for any access responsibilities and liabilities. And C, the implementation of the recommendation in section 13.04.3 of the municipality of Whitestone's official plan 2016 in respect of sewage system setbacks such that, so as to mitigate against the potential of phosphorus loading of the water body. The sewage disposal system shall be located at least 30 meters from the shoreline of the lake wherever possible. That payment of all, and it's, and 4, that payment of all applicable planning fees be made to the municipality of Whitestone. Is there a mover for this motion?
I'll move.
It's moved by Councillor McEwen. Is there a seconder? Councilor Matthews. It's open for discussion. I was just going to note, if you saw me pause where I was reading it, this condition says sewage disposal systems located at least 30 meters from the shoreline of the lake. The environmental report and what we heard from the Dupreys was it was going to be more than that. Am I correct or no?
Well, the actual septic bed will be greater than 30 meters back, but the drainage from that septic bed will go into the Limestone Lake watershed. And before it enters Lorimer Lake, 2 of the lots will be over 400 meters. And
one of
Yeah, two of the lots, it's in the Hutchinson. I can't remember the exact numbers, but 2 of the lots will be over 400 meters. They will drain at least 400 meters before they could enter Lorimer Lake. And the other lot, I believe, is 283 meters before it could drain into Lorimer Lake. But the septic beds would be at least, I don't know what the distance is. The topography of the land slopes up from the water, plateaus, and then goes the other way towards the Limestone Lake watershed. So all septic beds would be over the rise, so they would all drain away from Lorimer Lake. I don't know what those exact measurements are, but they're at least 30 meters. Probably highly exceeding 30 meters, I would think. I just don't know the exact measurements.
So that also begs the question, how far is your tile field from Limestone Lake?
Oh, a long ways.
So it's a long way, it's.
Oh, a long ways, yeah.
All right. Just want to make sure we're not.
Oh, no.
It's always different.
It's a long
All
ways.
right. Okay, thank you. Well, I guess this, this is the number that's in the resolution that's moved and seconded, so. I'm not seeking to amend it, I just to understand that it's why it was different from what you had said originally, but that's okay. Discussion from councilors. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor McEwen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I made my feelings rather known earlier. I feel if we're following the assessment program that's set out, and Hutchison's report is being very specific. I just personally don't feel that we should be in a position to close lakes with a broad brush or a quick brush or a stroke of a pen. I think it's where we're heading if we're not careful. And it's not saying we're open for business on a broad scale of small lots and a whole lot of extra traffic and business on lakes, especially the cold water lakes like Lorimer Lake. I really do appreciate where those folks are coming from and how their feeling is, so passionate and loving of their lake. It comes through quite loud and clear. But I stick with the moving of the motion. Thank you.
Councilor Gordon Matthews.
Thank you. So what I like is that we have the environmental report. I wish every lake development, every time a lot was created, we had something specific like this that gives detailed suggestions and recommendations that will protect the lake and the surrounding properties. I think if all of these things are implemented that were in the report, I think the risk is like minimum to the lake. My concern is who monitors that down the road. You know, if you have 30 meter shoreline and vegetation along the shoreline in 10, 20 years, how that gets changed. One thing I don't like is getting emails from people taking pictures of other people on their property. This guy cut down a tree. You know, we need somebody or some system in our municipality where we're monitoring site plans and such. And I think we heard that with Washkesh last meeting as well, is that, you know, the concern is they follow the recommendations in the environmental report, and then there's some deviation with subsequent owners. That being said, I think given the wording in the official plan and what Mr. Jackson has outlined, I don't see how we can say no to this based on, you know, in our hearts, we may all feel that this lake had been closed and that was the intention, but on paper, it doesn't say that. And I think we're setting ourselves up for difficulties if we were to say no outright.
Okay, Councilor Lamb, go ahead.
Thank you. And I agree with all the comments that have been made. I'll be supporting this. One of the reasons is we really don't have any choice. If we were to turn this down and play games or play political games or whatever, and we then took this to the OMB, in my opinion, we look silly. What would we say? Oh, it says that, and it says they can do it, but we thought it said that. It would be done before it even started. And the first thing that Dupuis would do would be to subpoena John Jackson, who's working on our behalf, and he'd say he supported it. So I mean, that isn't an option really that we, for those that think that we should, or those that think that, you know, suddenly Councilor Gordon Matthews or Joe Lamb or anyone else up here is saying that, you know, we should have a free-for-all of lots on Lorimer Lake. It isn't what we're saying. But practicality says you have to approve this particular application as much as it may stun us or surprise us or whatever. So I will be supporting it. I thank the Dupuis for a pretty good environmental assessment. We've seen several, and this is a good one. We've seen two good ones in the last couple of weeks.
I was told I didn't have to do EIS, but I thought I'd like to have that done as well.
Well, I thank you for that. And again, so I know there may be some bothersome things here. We may have to, you know, not against you, Mr. Dupuis, we may have to hold our nose and just approve it, but that's what we have to do, because we have no other choice. Okay, so those are my comments. And I also strongly encourage people in 2023, whether I'm up here or not, to really get involved in the official plan as it comes to each and every day and get your say, and so that we can not go through this sort of thing again, which is what we're going through now. Because I didn't know we did it in 2016, so I guess I'm not fault for that. But anyway, thank you very much.
Councilor Woods.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I echo what everybody says. Some of us to swallow, but it's in the paperwork. So we could, we look at French, and they most definitely would run it, the Ontario Land Tribunal, I believe. With a lot of the applications we've seen coming forward recently, in the past few years that I've been sitting on council, to me, it's getting clearer and clearer that as a municipality, I mean, maybe not us, but the next council, we really need to start looking at lake capacities and do a full-blown study on every single lake and what it's going to mean for capacity, whether it's, you know, width or size of lots, you know, septic inspections, continuing programs to make sure that our lakes are well protected and well taken care of. This one, you have to say yes. If you're doing the job correct, you'd have to say yes. You couldn't say no with this one. It is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, but that's the way it is. In the official CH that they were completely at capacity, but if McDougall just let new lots happen, how can we say no on Whitestone? I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, just a couple of comments. I find that the situation, and I don't fault the applicants in any way. I sympathize with them because they had obviously had a different understanding and different advice than ours was. But I have a huge problem with how we got into this situation in the first place, and I'm concerned that if we don't do something about it, we're going to have a flood of these before we have a chance to look at the whole matter seriously. And you know, I certainly think that it would be a good idea to have proper lake planning studies done, and that might be able to be done in conjunction with the with the review of our official plan. That review is going to take a couple of years to do. I've heard people talking in other cottagers associations about, oh, well, you can just do it in a few months or so. We can't do it in a few months, folks. There's a lot of work that goes into a lake plan by itself. And we're gonna have to create a committee, or you've heard some comments to this effect, we're gonna have to create a committee involving some ratepayers and so on, and we're gonna have to go off and spend some quality time looking at these things. We can't do it the way we did the last one, which was, you know, we tried to take a little piece of it in each council meeting over a period of a long time, and it didn't, I was part of the process that didn't work very well from my point of view, and we lost some things along the way. So, I mean, I guess what it boils down to this for me, the only way that I can support this is if I knew that council was going to pass the resolution that we were asked for earlier in the meeting and create a moratorium, which we could do. We could do that temporarily or do it in the interim and say, fine, there is no new lot creation period on Lorimer Lake until we get other things, until we get a chance to have a proper lake plan and so on. And I don't know what council would think about that. It's not on the agenda right now, so we could do it in what's left of this council term and then avoid this situation recurring and recurring over the next couple of years as people figure out that, oh my gosh, the door is maybe going to slam shut on us. We better start getting some applications in, and some of them won't be I dare say will not be the quality of this one. So again, it's not a matter of it's not a matter of that I'm not sympathetic to the what the applicants want to do. I'm not trying to shame them for wanting to do this or anything else. It's just I'm concerned that we're really making the mockery of what our intent was when we approved what we got, and until such a time as we have a chance to amend it, we're leaving the door open. So I'm certainly not in a position to support it at this point, and we're not knowing that we're gonna have that moratorium I referred to. So anyway, I don't want to prolong it any longer. If there are no final comments, I'll call the question.
We haven't dealt with moratorium. There's nothing at all eventually with the next meeting. With the CAO, the agenda of bringing that back for debate at the council.
Yeah.
There's nothing that stops you from doing that. But what perplexes me is because I think some of us are kind of looking like, what's the reason we can turn this down? You know, what is the reason? It can't be, well, you know, I don't feel real comfortable that that was our intent. You get laughed at, you won't be quicker than you ever get there. Like, you can't just say that. I can say it, but there's no merit to it. We have to, if you want to put a moratorium on development at Lorimer after this application, then bring it forward for discussion in council. And a decision will be made on it. So I don't think that's a outrageous request by you, right? But, you know, it just stinks of political things, right? So I don't support it because there's no basis. And I think most people see it that way. You just can't do what you want to do. Thank you. I know you're going to do it.
Okay, well, I sense I'm in the minority. All right, and keep in mind, again, as has been pointed out to you, we're not the decision makers. This is simply a recommendation that we're making to the planning board. It's the planning board that decides on this, right? So, I'm simply expressing to you my conscience in terms of where I am with this. With the situation we're in more so than. Is there anything further? All right, I will. I guess I will. No. I'm just going to call the question. All those in favor? The motion's carried.
every other thing this big, we have a vote.
You want to record a vote?
Well, I think we should. I mean, any other planning items come out.
All right.
We have a report, I don't know what we call it, but the clerk calls it out. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Go ahead.
Councillor Brian Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Joe Lab,
Yes.
Councillor Joe McKinnon,
Yes.
Councillor Brian Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Conrad.
No.
That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. Stop file there. So that brings us, I believe, to our, oh no. That brings us to our consent agenda, which consists of the following, regular council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 5th, special council meeting minutes for Wednesday, July 6th, library board meeting minutes for May 16th, Whitestone Environmental Stewardship Committee meeting minutes for July 6th, and regular council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 19th. And then there is the unfinished business listed on page 4 of the agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby approve the council meeting minutes of July 5th and 19th, 2022, in the special council meeting minutes of July 6th, 2022, and receives for information all other items contained in the consent agenda dated August 2nd, 2022. And again, mover and seconder? Councilor Woods moves, seconded by Councilor Brian Matthews. Any discussion on any of these? If not, all in favor? That's carried. Whoops, sorry. Wrong pile. All right, how about accounts payable? Again, mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receive for information the accounts payable listing in the amount of $63,069.75 from the July 19th, 2022 council meeting for the period ending July 15th, 2022, and $1,208,937.79 for the period ending July 29th, 2022. I'm sorry, that awkward wording is because we didn't actually deal with these in the last meeting. We ran out of time. So can I get a mover and seconder for one? Councilor Woods moves, seconded by Councilor Lamb. Any discussion? Do you have questions or comments about any of these items? All right, doesn't look like it. All right then, are you ready for the question? All those in favor? All right, okay, those are approved. And they're received, I guess. Now, the next item is staff reports. We have a budget control report for the 6 months ending June 30th. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receive report FIN 2022-09, which is the budget control report for the 6 months ending June 30th, 2022, for information purposes, and that staff continue to keep council updated with quarterly budgetary control reporting. Councilor McKeon moves, and Councilor Lamb seconds. Thank you. So, I don't know, are we getting an introduction on any of this, or do we just ask for questions? And
Our treasurer, Manish Kual, is on the line here in case anyone has any questions.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the.
Okay, thank you, Manish. Are there any questions for our treasurer about the report? Did you have a question, Councilor Ram, or? Okay.
Oh, game on.
All right.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just give us a very brief sort of overview of this. We have it, probably kind of has it, I guess, people on Zoom maybe don't have it, but just a, 30-second kind of summary where we're sitting financially. Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't get you the question.
You were asked if you could provide just a brief overview of this report.
The revenue is a little bit not favored to us as it's only 36%, but we are expecting a nursing station grants, like around 600,000. We are in the process of applying for that. It will be in a couple of months, we will get that revenue. And other than that, expense and capital expense we are in favor of 58%, and capital budgets, like a capital expenditure is not even started yet. Major portion is the nursing stations expenses. It's going to start in the Q2 and upcoming months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from there's a fair bit of detail there if you want to look at it. All right. This is for information. Can I call the question now? All those in favor? Thank you. The motion's carried. Our next report is building department upgrade and permit activity. Our CBO is not on the phone, but anyway, okay, so let's get the motion first. The Council of East Valley Whitestone does hereby receive report building 2022-03, which is the building department update and permit activity report for April 1st to June 30th, 2022 for information. Moved by Councilor Wood, seconded by Councilor McEwen. All right. You were going to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Just two things I'd like to mention on behalf of our CBO who couldn't be here tonight. He's very busy, and I can attest to that. He's out of the office a fair bit on inspections and is reviewing a lot of plans. He is now close to 90, issuing 90 permits at this point in time. He also wanted me to say that he's getting close to implementing the cloud permit. The challenge right now is that he's so busy. He's had all the training, he's set up the reports, and he feels it's probably best served so that he can give the best attention to it is to wait till September when things do slow down. There's a bit of a lull, but he's very interested and he's keen on it, and his fellow CBOs in the region are all using it, so he's got some good mentors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks. Any questions on this report? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor of receiving it? Thank you very much. That's carried. That brings us to item 9.3, which is a tender to supply, deliver, mix, and stockpile winter sand or granular screenings. And the requested resolution is that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report Public Works -2022-08, retender number 2022-11, which was for the supply, delivery, mix, and stockpile of winter sand or granite screenings. And that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby award the supply, delivery, mixing, and stockpiling of 2,000 metric tons of winter sand in the amount of $32,400 plus HST to Berman Construction Incorporated. Who would like to move that? Councilor Ron Matthews. And Councilor Woods. All right, any discussion? Oh, sorry, do you want to? Oh, yes, of course. Public Manager of Public Works, David Creaser, is on the phone, so, or on Zoom. David, do you have any comments about this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This year we have a contract, Berman Construction, which is different contractor we've had over the past few years. The price has gone up this year about 8,000 over last year, which is a bit more. It is coming out of South River. They're able to supply us. It's good material coming, but we look forward to another good year for a winter maintenance activities. So we do need this. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for this one? Okay, I guess I will ask the clerk to call the roll for this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Ron Matthews? Yes.
I'll do it.
Oh, do it. Okay, thank you. Councilor Lamb?
Yes.
Councilor McEwen?
Yes.
Councilor Woods?
Yes.
Mayor Conley?
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, to item number 10, which is a bylaw to enter into an agreement to develop and deliver the municipality of Whitestone's after-school program. We need a move and seconder that bylaw 42-2022, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement to develop and deliver the municipality of Whitestone after-school program, be read a first and second time the second day of August 2022, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed the second day of August 2022, and numbered bylaw 42-2022. Councilor Woods moves, seconded by Councilor Lamb. Thank you. Discussion. Okay. Do you have any comments? Or?
No.
Oh, sorry. All right. So it's a bylaw, so I'll ask our clerk to call the roll for the vote, please.
Councilor Ron Matthews? Yes. Councilor Lamb?
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Conley.
Yes.
Thank you, that motion is carried.
All right, thank you. Under business matters, we have a request, under 11.1, we have a request from the Whitestone McKellar Lions Club for, I guess you could describe it as a new bottle shed. And I'll get the motion first, and I think we have a representative of the club patiently waiting to maybe to speak to us, I don't know, but anyway. The Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has hereby received the request from the Whitestone McKellar Lions Club for a new bottle shed at the Olds Road landfill site for information purposes, and that staff bring this item for consideration at the 2023 budget process. So that's the suggested resolution. Would someone like to move that? Councilor Lamb's moving, seconded by, oh, we've got the choice here. Well, I'll take Councilor McEwen this time, I guess. So the motion is on the floor. Is there any discussion? Did you wish to speak to it, or no? No?
If anybody's got any questions, I can try.
Oh, all right. Okay, that's fine.
This is new. If there's any questions, I will try and answer them for you.
Sorry, just introduce yourself, if you don't mind, for the people. Introduce yourself to the people who are on the Zoom call.
My name is Joyce Campbell. I am the new president of the Whitestone McKellar Lions Club as of July 1st.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've also been coordinator of the Alt Stump for several years. I know the condition in the shed that we have. It is not in good shape. Somebody is going to get injured or bitten by whatever decides to be inside of it. So we could really use a new shed. Because we do good in the community, such as last week when we went to the dump, we had a meeting or discussion with the group of people that were there. We decided to give Harvest Share $500 of our funds immediately Wednesday afternoon. So our money does go back into the community, so we cannot afford to put a new shed up. So we are requesting that the council give us one as soon as possible.
All right, thank you very much. Are there questions or comments from councilors?
Joyce, Councillor Lamb, thank you for all your hard work, and I'm buoyed by the things I see on Facebook and whatever, that you have more members now than.
We do. We've doubled our members from 4, and we're going to close because we just couldn't perform anymore. It's up to 9, and we're hoping to get more. So if anybody's interested, we're open.
Good for you. So Joyce, was it a hard-fought election to become president, or did?
I was coerced into it by that.
I thought that was the answer. Thank you.
I'm enjoying it. I've learned a lot.
Good for you. I do have a question of council once.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah, go ahead. Sure. Sure.
I just wondered, it's $5,000. We have a $5.5 million budget. Is there any sense to, or can we do that this year? Can we find $5,000 somewhere and get the thing, order it now so it's up there for the winter as opposed to waiting to the spring and then come in June or July next year? So that's just a question mark. I certainly would support this year. Thank you.
Do we know what the lead time is on getting it?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what the lead time is on, if you ordered it, how long?
No, our secretary has been working on this, and he's out of the country, so I would assume, like most companies, it will take several weeks or maybe even a few months to get it. So the sooner it's ordered, the sooner we can proceed.
All right, well, I don't know, I suppose if it goes through the budget process, you won't, for next year, you won't get it until May or June. Do you think we can find it? So is it the wish of council to, instead of bringing the item for consideration at the 2023 budget process, to ask our CAO and treasurer to see if they can fund it out of this year's account?
You need a motion?
Yeah.
Well.
I'll amend my motion. I'll amend it.
Okay.
You're on it, right?
Councilor McKinnon?
Was it me or was it?
No, you're the seconder, I think.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I will go with that.
Okay, well, let me just change the wording here. And it's staff, what did it say?
Joyce, you go back to the Lions and say you did such a great job in the presentation. You moved it from last year to this year. How's that?
Thank you so much.
That assumes it gets approved here.
Okay, so I just changed that last that last clause to read, and that staff find the necessary funds in the current year's budget. Everybody's okay with that? All right, I'll just call the question. We'll give it to all fans. Okay, that's carried. So looks like you will get your. Thank you. All right. So we are now at correspondence, and we have a number of items, if I can just get the list here. Okay. There are, I don't know, A, B, C, D, E, 5 items from the previous meeting that we did not get to because of time. You'll notice that there's several things having to do with the Amber Alert situation. And you probably got an Amber Alert around supper time tonight. There's also some new correspondence, another 6 items of new correspondence that are new as of this meeting. So I'm going to ask councillors, are there any of those that you wish to highlight? Councillor Woods?
Item K.
Item K. All right. Thank you regarding Gooseneck Dock. Is there any other one? No? All right. Okay. Gooseneck Dock. All right, so the motion that we need then is, whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the correspondence items listed on page 5 of the August 2nd, 2022 Council agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that Council receive the correspondence items for information with the following extracted for further discussion or action. And the item there is item K, which was the thank you email regarding the Gooseneck Lake Dock. Who would like to move that? Councilor Matthews, seconded by Councilor Woods. All right. All those in favor? That's carried. So, item K, Councilor Woods.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to bring this up because I've seen a lot of people make a lot of use of all the Staff put into this. The picture is like, a bunch of kids have fun on the lake. That's what we should all be looking forward to, that kind of thing. Just wanted to highlight that. And it's not even my kids. I've received 2 comments about the launch. Everybody loves it. They're just asking why there's so many poles with different signs on them. Couldn't we get the signs on like 1 or 2 poles kind of thing, just to eliminate some of the poles there? Thanks.
I don't think I don't think our Director of Public Works is still on the phone, but anyway. Thank you for that. So, councilor items. So Woods.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. 2, I don't think I actually forgot about, just wondering where, what stages. It's the question. Maybe a few meetings ago about the rental of the excavator, and there was going to be a report to council. I was just wondering if that was in the works or would be coming anytime soon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the Public Works Manager is working on that, along with a couple of other reports. So it will be coming. I'm hoping in September, maybe not the first meeting, but the second, and certainly in time for any budget discussions for what might happen next year.
Thank you. Just one more quick one. Accesses that we have on all.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. That is another report that the Public Works Manager is working on. I've seen parts of it already, so that you will see that in September as well.
Thanks very much.
Other councillor questions? Councillor McKinnon? Okay, councillor items.
Mr. Mayor, just a comment that I was traveling Whitestone a couple times in the last few weeks, and it's quite noticeable that there is shoreline work done along certain properties in Whitestone. And I have no idea what permits are happening and this and that. And I saw one machine actually pulling stuff from the lake and doing some retro work along the shoreline. I am aware that the Ocean and Fisheries have some new personnel in the area. And apparently that is it's a plan of theirs to become more proactive and get around to take a look at shorelines, and it'd certainly be available for complaints from neighbors or community. But maybe as we get into our next, can't do it for this one, but the next newsletter, we could make a note in there to remind people, ask them to be more diligent and careful along the shorelines. As has been noted, shoreline is very important to the life of the lakes. So anyway, just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On that note, if I may just add something, there was at the Wabash Conservation Association annual meeting, which took place on Saturday, there was a representative of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, their enforcement group, who gave a presentation, and basically what he was talking about was what are the conditions in which you need a permit to do something on the shore in the water. And it turns out it's not a simple subject, but as a general rule, and I mean, particularly with respect to docks, there's things that you can do there are limits on what you can do in the water without getting a permit. And there are other things that are more complicated that you need a permit for. Perhaps we should arrange to have that. Maybe we could, I'm sure we have the presentation probably circulated, and it also gives a contact. He pointed out that this chap who gave the presentation pointed out that they will respond to inquiries or complaints or whatever they are, or tips. They call it a tips line they have for this. But they're backed up heavily with, there's only a small number of people working on this, and they're backed up. So they're still dealing with complaints that occurred early in the pandemic, apparently. So some of them, DFO is also, they get involved anytime that you would potentially disturb fish habitat. If you're not potentially disturbing fish habitat, they don't care. But you are supposed to, and if you ask the MNR for a permit and there is some concern about fish habitat, then they will automatically pass that on to DFO, and then DFO gets to comment on it as well. And they'll either tell you, no, you can't do it, certain things you can't do. Like if you want to create your own beach by filling it in with sand, you're not going to get a permit for that. According to this individual. It's not to me, right? But if you want to dredge out the bottom of the lake, you're going to need a permit for that, and you might get it, you might not, depending on what it is you need to do and where it is. So anyway, it's I guess I would echo what Councillor McEwen said, which is, there is a tips line, and we could actually put this on our website, I suppose, but there is a tips line for the MNR, and you can call it in, and if you see something going on, and at least, eventually you should get an answer back. Anyway. So, yes, Councillor Lamb is next.
Yeah, I have an inquiry, but I was at the same meeting. Conservation officer was really good-looking young man, had the full uniform. I think it was a gun.
On the side, aren't we?
On the side, and he was a very impressive dude. So the first question that came from the floor was the guy who said, "My wife wants to know how I can get a uniform like yours." That was the humorous part. And my inquiry is similar to Councillor Wood's. I brought up that I just maybe want to put it sort of an unfinished business. Sometimes we have the unfinished business, and I think they trash things like Councillor Wood is saying. What I'm just looking at, maybe sometimes it should be put up there as an item, and then we won't lose sight of it. But I'd asked a month or so ago about the bunny trail, whether there was any area that we could work cooperatively with, either us do it or I think Google does the other end. So I haven't seen that report, and I didn't expect it by now, but I don't want to lose sight of it either. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just a brief comment on that. I know that our public works manager has met with the folks from McDougall. I'm not sure that we got a huge amount of cooperation, but I think there's still some work that can be shared. So that's still a work in progress.
Okay, so Councillor Dora Matthews, did you?
Well, my comment was just related to what you were speaking to on the shorelines and the MNRF. We, the Environmental Stewardship Committee, did have a meeting with Rob Gibson right a few months ago. It would have been early or late last year. And we have a copy of his presentation. I don't know if and it was included in the minutes during one of our council meeting agendas. So if we want to share that presentation online, or we could, it covers basically what was covered on Saturday at that meeting. We could share that information with people.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Nope. Questions from the public? Yeah, please go to the microphone, Scott, if you don't mind.
I guess I have 2 or 3 questions.
Just tell everybody on Zoom who you are, please.
I'm Scott Nash. And I guess the first question, it would be on page 4 of the agenda. The first question I'd have would be on page 4 of the agenda under unfinished business. The last update there, it says on May 3rd, council requested additional refinements to be presented at a future council meeting. And I thought a lot of stuff had passed in regards to the official plan amendment number 2 and the private roads, and had been sent to, or was going to be sent to the government. I'm not sure if I misread it or not. I guess that's my first question.
Okay, you want to answer that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I can, Mr. Mayor. That should be updated. There actually will be a report coming to council with regard to the OPA in the first meeting of September.
Okay, and then the second question, I don't know if everybody has it, but just after page 6 of my agenda, I have property tax email authorization form for an individual, which I'm not going to say the name of, but it has her name, her phone number, her address, her roll number, signature. And I'm just wondering why that would have been included in the agenda.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are aware of that. That was an error by one of our staff members. It should not have been included. It wasn't posted on the website, but it did get into a few agendas.
And staff wouldn't have checked it before it went out. I guess my question would be, because it's quite private information, but anyways, I'm going to ignore the information there, but I don't think it should be there. And then my third comment is really just a comment. And I think, Mr. Mayor, you'd made a comment about a moratorium on Lorimer Lake. And I guess my question to that is, if council decided just to make a moratorium just because they wanted to, what grounds would that be? And I'm assuming if there was a moratorium put for no reason and there was no planning reports to it or no lake plan report to it, anybody could appeal that and it would just get completely thrown out. So I don't know why people would be saying we'll put a moratorium on just because, with no background information to it. So it's really more of a comment of why that would have been said. And that's all the questions I have.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly how to answer it, other than to say I think it's pretty clear that council's intent was to support that all along, and it might end up being an interim thing, but the policy, we have other lakes that are, as you heard earlier, we have other lakes that are closed to development. And they're really closed to development. There is no reference in the official plan to LCAH in them. It's not saying, well, if you can satisfy this or that, maybe you can develop. It says no. So, that was a decision that council took at a particular point in time. And I mean, it was based on whatever information was available at the time. And I would, to be honest with you, I'd have to go back and look at what the case that was made for it when we decided to step it down and shut it down. But I think, if we were to do that, it would be done pending a proper lake plan study, which would then be done up to date and would take into consideration, if I remember something, in the past, like there have been over the years, there have been various models, capacity models. Okay, and I can remember, for example, the Oshkosh, where I am, that it's a lake trout lake, and there was a study that was done by the MNR using an old model. This was done in, I'm going to say, the 1960s. And they said to us, they ran the model, and I saw the actual, it was a computer model that used a bunch of parameters, and lake trout figured heavily in it. And it said there was room for 400 new lots in the upper lake and 300 or something on the big lake, bottom lake. I can tell you when I saw that, I was at a gas. That would completely destroy the lake, right? I mean, it was just beyond reason. But that's the model to use. Well, they got rid of the model. So if you ask them about it, nobody knows anything about it. They have since replaced it with other ones. Okay, so I'm not arguing that we shouldn't do a proper lake plan. I wish we had done that, but they're not simple exercises, and the municipality in the past has not, had kind of the resources to do it. So this is something that would have to be tackled I think in another year, and perhaps at the end of that there might be then some other constraints. I can suggest to you something else. If we had gone back. Like if all of the development that had occurred over the last, 20, 30 years, maybe even before the municipality existed, which is only 22 years. If it had been done in accordance with some of the things that were in LCOH and so on, then we would probably be in a different situation. That might affect the capacity we're at today. So we're living with some history. There are some lots, again, I'll use the Oshkosh as an example. There are lots there that are less than 100 feet of frontage. And today, there's no way that you would ever be allowed to create them. But they were created historically, and they're grandfathered, and people use them. And some of them do not have locations, any location that you could put a septic system above water, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just saying, it's like we're trying to get ourselves into the passage of time in some taking into consideration where we are and come up with some rules that make sense so that we don't trash things for the next generation. I think that's really what the concern is.
Yeah, and I think some of the report was based on the LCAH that gave approval. But my question was, without doing a report, why would you put a moratorium on? You didn't ask that question. My question was, why would you put a moratorium on before you did a report? If you do all these reports and it says this is what you should do, but why would you put a moratorium on before you did the report?
Well, I already answered that. Is my concern is that when people realize that there's something coming down the pipe and that this one has been approved, then they'll say, well, okay, let's go for broke. I mean, there's some other good chunks there are still some good chunks of property along the lake. And people will say, hey, I better get in here and get my application. That's what my concern is.
And the moratorium would hold up in court? That's all my questions.
Well, who knows? All right. So, questions from the public?
It's not really a question, but it's regarding water quality in Lorimer Lake. Couldn't there be something legal that say every 5 years, every property owner on the lake would have to have either his septic bed, his gray water pit, his holding tank, et cetera, inspected at maybe the cost of the landowner? And if there's a deficiency, then the landowner has to fix the deficiency.
I don't understand why everybody's so concerned about septic beds and polluting the lake. And I'm sure there's some deficient septic beds out there or gray water pits. We're on Lorimer Lake and we see this white foam now coming down the lake. And good friends of ours, he owned Lorimer Lake Resort, I don't know, 40 years ago or something. He owned it for about 12 years. And I was talking to him about that and he said, that's phosphate, that foam. He said, take a sample of it and get it tested in Perry Sound. So, I mean, couldn't we implement something? Can't you implement something that every 5 years, every system that people have, whether that be septic bed or gray water pit or holding tank, that be inspected every 5 years? And I know there's dye that you can put into a septic bed and it's fluorescent. You go check it at night the next day, and if it shows up in the lake, you know you're polluting the lake.
Sure. Well, the answer to your question is yes, that could be done. And I believe that the Environmental Stewardship Committee has talked about it, and maybe you might want to. Dennis, if you want to respond, go ahead.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. You bring up some great questions, and the Environmental Stewardship Committee, certainly this was on our radar screen big time. One of the things that most people don't know, and we've been trying to spread the news, right now the Ontario Building Code says owners of a septic system are obligated to. So there's already laws in place that your could charge somebody if they're not maintaining. Includes things like getting it pumped out regularly, and it isn't, the frequency isn't always based on 5 years, it's really based on use. So, but you have to keep records and maintain it, and you can be charged if you don't. So there's already laws in place about that. And one of the reasons why the Environmental Stewardship Committee decided not to go down the road of mandatory inspection, because we found there was probably bigger areas to tackle first. It's not to say some septics, gray water systems are deficient, because they're likely out there, but they aren't the biggest things to worry about, to start with. So that's the reason for that. There's already laws in place. We had discussed at great length about mandatory inspection programs. Felt that the better would be education of people to tell them, we do have an obligation to maintain it. It's a requirement. And I've seen people take up that torch now. They're going to fix up their septics, make them better, because they recognize after some of the education and material we spread, they realize that they weren't doing a good enough job. So we think keeping the word out there and keeping the pressure on people and letting them know there is an obligation in place. I think that's even better than saying your place is coming up next for inspection.
So we hope everybody has that moral responsibility.
Well, it isn't just moral. I mean, you could complain to the municipality that that septic is leaking or causing problems, and the building inspector could charge them. Simple as that.
But you don't really know, you don't even know where people's septic beds are,
Okay. So I'm conscious of the fact that the people on Zoom, and there are a few left, and we'll not be able to hear what we're, well, we are past curfew. I just see though that Margie has her hand up and because she wanted to ask a question, saying, I'm going to let that, and then we started about, 10, 15 minutes early, so we got time for this one question. Margie, do you want?
Mayor, it's Robert Duda. I'd love to jump in a quick question as well. Thank you.
Who was that?
It was Robert Duda.
Oh, okay, Robert. Sorry, I just saw your phone number and didn't see it. Go ahead. All right, Margie, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for acknowledging me. As you know, I've been waiting since the business development guy was on, so I'm not sure these questions can be answered, but they are brief. The first one was to thank him for that presentation. Lots of information I wasn't aware of. The question I have, there's two. The first one is there any representation on that committee from Whitestone? And if so, who is it?
I'm sorry, wait. The development committee. I will ask our clerk to answer.
Yes, I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor. I represent the municipality. I'm the former chair. I think the new chair has been there about a year, but I was the chairperson for about 3 years. So the CAOs represent their municipalities on the West Prairie Sound Economic Development Committee.
Okay, thank you. So the second part of that then is, it appears to me from the presentation that it is a mechanism through which new businesses can be enlightened to the municipalities and the things that they offer. I'm wondering if it's ever been used in reverse, i.e. can the municipalities ask for support from the business development group or the economic development group in terms of specifically the West Tech group, in terms of, are there things that we should be asking or pursuing? I know there was a number discussed at the one meeting that they could help us vet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have an answer to your question, Margie. I would need to give some thought to that. It's what I would call a one-man show. He spreads himself pretty thin, and as he indicated, he did work with West Tech at the beginning, introduced the group to different funding opportunities and different municipalities. Certainly something to think about. I'm not sure how much help he could be, but in terms of what's next for the municipality on West Tech, I think it's falling above what the economic development officer would be capable of providing.
Awesome. Thank you for your help.
All right, thank you. And Robert, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Just wanted to support the comments there on the septic systems of existing waterfront owners and landowners. There's excruciating amounts of efforts, time by associations, individual members, groups to prevent landowners, waterfront owners from developing their properties. And the problem is that the true impacts of thousands of properties in Whitestone on those lakes is from existing cottages, existing problems with septics. And I think council now and in the future needs to recognize that solving environmental quality issues with new development that follows new septic regulations, all these setbacks, absolutely restrictive requirements that border on ridiculous for 30-meter setbacks from a species of risk that hasn't even been identified, is excessive as compared to looking in people's own backyards, which they don't want to do. And so council needs to reflect that an application by an individual with land or waterfront is following current regulations where there's thousands of properties. So if you guys truly, if council truly and the associations truly care about what they're saying, and they're not anti-cancel culture, they'll reflect that their efforts primarily should be on existing old systems, old properties, septics that flood on Wawakesh, all sorts of problems that are out there. And that's the only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask for a mover for a confirmatory bylaw, please. Let's see, Councilor Lamb and Councilor Wood seconded. All those in favor? That's carried. Who would like to adjourn? Councilor Woods would like to adjourn. Anybody else would like to adjourn?
I'll second.
I need a second. All right. Sorry, I picked the wrong box here. Councilor McEwen. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for your patience and perseverance. We are adjourned until September 6th, 2022 at 6:30 PM, unless the chair calls the meeting earlier. So enjoy the rest of your August.